Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, Dustin Fox, Jason Lloyd, Tyvis Powell, plus, ba-da-da-da-da, you're loving him, Mikey McNuggets. And so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show starts now. Booyah.
And that's oh my God.
He dropped it.
Oh my, the Browns live to see another day. He threw a gift-wrapped interception to Kyle Hamilton, one of the best defensive players in the league, and Kyle Hamilton bobbled that. There must be Vaseline on the football, G. It was an overthrow to Elijah Moore.
Kyle Hamilton.
That is incredible.
He undercut that route.
That is incredible.
And that's about 4 or 5. That's about 4 or 5 interceptions that either the Ravens or the Browns could have had at this point. So right here, it's second down. We need somebody to step up. We need somebody to figure this thing out. And these are where the games come down to, right?
He almost threw an interception. He's about to throw a touchdown here. The football gods he's going deep. And Tillman, touchdown!
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 Yes! 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 That's what I'm talking about, baby! Let's go! Listen,
Tillman gets beyond the defense.
He has the shortest memory of all the time. He has dementia version of football. He didn't remember what happened 2 plays ago, up, top, down, south to Tillman, and he got the 2 fingers up. Famous Jameis Winston. Let's go, baby.
And just like that, the Jameis Winston train is born.
And listen, Flaccavelli is here. Jameis Winston is here. People called me a clown. But guess what? Yeah, I am. But put some respect on it. Big circus in the building.
Why are you a clown?
Because, my clown tendencies, because I told people that Jameis Winston might got a little something. He's a clown. Deshaun's done. Now you're on Jameis Winston. I said, yeah, man, I got a little something for y'all. And Jameis came up and did what he was supposed to do. So listen, I accept the clown type behavior. But if you're going to call me a clown, make sure you put some respect on the clown's
Make it Mr.
name.
Clown.
Big Circus is the name, and we in the game to get it done. Let's go. Win. Victory Monday, baby. Let's roll.
It is. Wow.
Yeah.
Fun game. So much to unpack. Yeah. Big show. Your column was awesome. About time somebody said what to print, what
everybody saw it.
Was obvious.
Everybody saw it.
A lot to get to. I want to take a quick second off the top. I don't want to go too long here because we're going to do it at the end. But I think Jim Donovan had a hand in Hamilton dropping that football. Call me crazy. A lot of people will. I don't know how else to explain it. Jimmy's spirit was in the locker room, as you know, before the game.
Yep.
It was in all of their thoughts and their minds and their processes. And our hearts now go out to Jimmy's wife, Cheryl, and their daughter, Megan. This is a very tough time for all of us that knew Jimmy, that worked with Jimmy. And really, even if you didn't know Jimmy, you felt like you knew Jimmy. So it's really a tough time for the entire Northeast Ohio fan base, and particularly the Browns fan base.
I wrote a column that it's going up soon, might be up now, that Jimmy was defending Kyle Hamilton on that play. And Jimmy kicked the plant foot of Justin Tucker when he missed the 50-yard field goal. Jimmy just reached his hand out and nudged the sun 6 inches left.
It's amazing.
And Rashad Bateman's eyes, because the ball was right there. It was a wide open, easy catch. It should have been a touchdown.
Yeah.
And it's an incomplete pass.
That's football. That's the way the ball bounces sometimes. When you win, you tend to forget about those plays that went your way. When you lose, you highlight them and you hold on to them. That's the game. We've had enough of those go against us. Whatever happened yesterday at Huntington Bank Field, it was historic, it was monumental, and I think we've turned the page. I think this was the last period on the Deshaun Watson paragraph, story, whatever you want to call it, during his time here. I think he's done. It was amazing how you take one piece out, put another piece in, and suddenly everything looks better.
Looks like last year, didn't it?
Looks exactly
like last year. What's that tell you?
Let's go around the horn with shotgun reactions. Bull, you can start us.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest takeaway to me was that, man, it really solidified how gutless Deshaun Watson played here in Cleveland. And solidified him as clearly the worst quarterback in the NFL, which is really hard to believe. I know some people say, well, leave him alone. Well, what we saw is at best, mediocre quarterback in Joe Flacco, and at best, mediocre quarterback in Jameis Winston look like legitimate NFL players running this offense. Yes, mistakes were made. Jameis threw a ton of passes that could have or should have been picked. But Jameis and Joe play with you want to say reckless abandon? They're not worried. They're not afraid to make a mistake, and that's why they're able to make big plays. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, you can't win on the biggest stage with quarterbacks like that. I mean, the counter to that would be that Joe Flacco had one. He didn't used to play that way. He plays that way now.
And guys have won that way, but it's rare.
Yeah, but what you can do is you can win some games and you can look like a real NFL team. You cannot be scared to throw the ball down the field and get intercepted. The offense was exactly the same. The guys were open again, but this time they had a quarterback that wasn't afraid to throw it to them, wasn't afraid to throw with anticipation. And everybody else, yes, guys played better. The team looked different. They looked like a real NFL team, and that was a lot of fun. It was a great game. It was a fun game. I would have said it was a fun, obviously it wouldn't have been as fun if they would have lost. But even if they had lost, you could have still said, hey, that was a fun game. Unfortunately, we lost. And we haven't had many of those. We haven't had any of those this year.
First one this year.
And so, yeah, it was fun to see that, okay, we started to think maybe we overrated the rest of the talent. I don't know. I still think we did a little bit, but not as much as we thought, because at least for one game, and it's only one game, the talent on this roster overall looked just fine.
My thought was really simple. For the last month, the Browns have lied to you. And they told you that Deshaun Watson gave this team the best chance to win. You knew it wasn't true. I knew it wasn't true. We all knew it wasn't true. The entire city of Cleveland, the entire franchise knew it wasn't true. And they still kept running him out there because of the contract. And trying to prove the contract was a valid decision. It wasn't. We knew that by the end of September. And they wrecked their own season. They sabotaged their own season to try and prove some sort of point. And it aggravates me because it didn't have to be this way. The season didn't have to go this way. They didn't have to be a 2-6 football team and out of the playoffs already. So there's some people, whoever's decision that was, whether it was Kevin Stefanski or someone above him, whoever insisted that they keep running Deshaun out there, shoulders the blame for what happened to this season. Because Sunday looked exactly like last year did when Joe Flacco took over. This is now 5 straight games, regular season games, that Deshaun Watson did not start that the quarterback threw for over 300 yards. Something Deshaun never did in his time here. It was Deshaun. It was always Deshaun. It wasn't the play calling. Had nothing to do with who was holding the play sheet. It had to do with who was holding the football. And now you learn from that, and now you move on. And I agree with Jay. That last week was the last time you'll ever see Deshaun Watson on the field for the Cleveland Browns.
Listen, I think the story could be about Deshaun Watson. The story could be about who done it and who is the blame game. But for me, I take from what happened on that football field, the Baltimore Ravens came into that game playing like one of the best teams in the league. The Baltimore Ravens just got done dusting off the Tampa Bay Buccaneers the week before. Lamar Jackson, people were saying 3-time MVP. They was already giving it to him. And the Cleveland Browns came out there on that football field and they did 2 things. They solidified the fact that, hey, Kevin Stefanski got his team to play. When people was talking about Kevin being done, when Kevin was out of here, people was talking about Barry, who's going to get fired. Give Kevin Stefanski credit because he came out and his team played better. His team didn't fold up. There were some calls that didn't go their way. They did not fold up. Also, you look at what Kevin Stefanski did. I commend him for this. A lot of times we telling people like, hey, listen, Kevin Stefanski couldn't make the call on this. He couldn't make the call on that. The ownership is telling him what to do. I give him all the credit in the world for giving Ken Dorsey the plays and saying, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be an active coach, an active CEO on the sideline. I thought Ken Dorsey did a great job calling plays. I thought there was some flow to it, some rhythm to it. And it shows that when you put confidence in your staff and you give them the confidence to go out there and make some plays, I thought he did a tremendous job. And then finally, my thing is Jameis Winston. We talked about it last year when we talked about Joe Flacco. At first, people thought, oh, that's a nice story. It's Joe Flacco. Then he started continuing to play, and his team rallied around him. So when you see Jameis Winston, and I was watching last week while I was ill, Sean King said this, let's not put a ceiling on Jameis Winston. Let's see what he actually really has, because last year we didn't want Joe Flacco until Joe Flacco showed up and showed what he can do. There was a lot of interceptions. People talk about those interceptions. I care less about that. We was just talking 2 weeks ago about check down Charlie and Deshaun Watson and how he wasn't pushing the ball downfield. So for me, we could go coulda, woulda, shoulda. The Browns could have did the same thing when we was taking L's and Deshaun wasn't playing well. We was taking the full brunt of that. The coulda, woulda, shouldas, it was happening, and we was taking account for it. If the interceptions didn't happen, I'm gonna take that 3, whatever he threw for, and like it. And here's the big thing too. I will say this. At the end of the day, I think the Cleveland Browns fan base, you got to look at it like this. Everything that we talked about before with Deshaun Watson, you got to leave that wherever that at. Like, to me, like after today, it's a non-story. Deshaun Watson probably will never play for the Cleveland Browns again, and the Cleveland Browns are 1-0 moving forward with the guys that they still have in this locker room. And so when we look at it, it's just like going on dates. Sometimes when you get out of a bad relationship, the worst thing that you could do is go around going on dates asking people to marry you. Nah, what are you doing? No, anybody marrying you right now. What we're going to do is have some fun. We're going to go on some dates. We're going to go to the movies with Jameis Winston and hang out a little bit. That's no commitments. And if something happens, something happened. But other than that, I'm not going to be running here looking for no franchise quarterback the rest of the year, because I need something to look forward to, Jay. It ain't even Halloween yet. And the Brown season is out of here. I'm going to take my time with this, and I'm going to date just like we supposed to. Good win, and we'll talk about the rest of the things. They try to put this Deshaun Watson stuff behind us in bed and see what we do moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with your point that the Deshaun Watson story, as of today, we'll pick the carcass clean today. Yesterday, what we saw at Huntington Bank Field was the football funeral for Deshaun Watson. That's it. It's over. It's a wrap. It's done. He's finished. He's certainly finished here. Maybe he'll get a look, maybe, after this. I can't imagine that he does. What we learned yesterday was the power of one position. I've always said it is the most difficult position in sports to play. It is also the most important position to play. The Browns were a better football team yesterday before they ever put cleat to grass. They were better because their mind was better. They knew the guy that their coach was telling them gave them the best chance to win. They knew that was wrong too. They had to have. They see it in practice every day. They know it more than we know it. And what's sad about this whole story is that had he not been hurt, they'd still be rolling him out there. They'd still be stinking the place up with that. It took an injury for them to stumble upon the fact that this is a pretty good football team like we all thought. All of a sudden, you've got 4 pass catchers looking like they belong in the NFL, when prior to this year, our best pass catcher got run out of town, and the other ones, with him still throwing the football, looked remedial. So what we learned yesterday was you take a toxic presence out of the mix and put in a Jameis Winston vocal leader, and all of a sudden, you're better before the game starts. Defense looked better yesterday, guys? What do you think? Defense looked great.
The defense played well against Cincinnati the week before.
Forget the defense.
They did. They were coming. There were signs that they were coming along.
The offensive line.
The offensive line suddenly.
O-line.
You know why?
O-line game.
Because to your point, you had a quarterback who was so afraid to throw an interception, he would take a sack. He would try to scramble and get maybe 1 yard. He would throw an incompletion. His biggest fear was, I'm not going to throw an interception. And he didn't. But other than that, he was abysmal. The line looked better because you had a quarterback that was willing to force it into tight windows. This is the NFL. There are rarely wide open guys. Usually the windows and the lanes for throwing are very tight, and the margin for error is negligible. And in Jameis Winston, you're right, he's a gunslinger, and you're also right, he lived on the edge and got a lot of lucky breaks. And if not, we're talking about a completely different narrative today. But he got those breaks. And the fact of the matter is, when he had to make a big play, he dropped back, he found his guy deep, and he threw a pass that we all remember what that looks like with the orange helmet, but we haven't seen it this year.
Well, Jay, what was particularly exciting about that, beyond the obvious that it was a touchdown, was the fact, like right before, when the Browns got the ball there, I tweeted out, like, please don't play conservative. Play to win.
Sure.
Don't play not to lose. Like, don't just settle for a field goal. Your kicker's been not as reliable this year. He did a good job yesterday, and then they take a chance on that play, and it almost got picked off.
Right.
And then I thought to myself, oh, now they're definitely going to get conservative. And the very next play, they got even more aggressive, which I loved, and it panned out.
The Ravens thought they were going to get conservative, too.
I bet they did.
They were clearly creeping, and they got caught deep.
Yes, and I love that. That's what I loved about Stefanski, and I wasn't seeing it this year, is not playing with your you-know-what's in your hand.
Right.
Let's go. We play to win.
So they're better with him on the bench. I had talked about the control and the experiment. I would have loved to have seen what this game would have looked like with Stefanski calling the plays. But
the exact same.
We'll get into it. But my general takeaway was that's Kevin's offense.
Yeah.
That's what he likes to do. That's Kevin.
We're going to dive into all this stuff throughout the next 2 hours, including the defense, the injuries, DeWanda at left tackle, the weapons, Jameis, why it took so long to make a change, but we got to get a quick word in from FanDuel, guys. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $5 and $150 in bonus bets if they win their first bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to join today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We talked about Jameis, but let's start with grading Jameis's debut as the Browns starting quarterback. He threw for 330+, 3 touchdowns, including a game-winning drive. Jason, we'll start with you. What grade would you give Jameis for his performance in his first start as the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback?
Well, since he had Jim Donovan on his side, I'd give him an A-. I mean, I don't know how you can go any lower than that. He had a couple balls that should have been picked, but they weren't. So you judge based on what's out there, and to put up the first 300-yard game of the season, the great throw to Tillman. Mike and I were talking before the show. He had a couple throws. He had one where he anticipated Elijah Moore coming out of his break and threw a beautiful ball, just a beautiful pass. Go back to the first throw of the game to David Njoku. You didn't see that last week or the week before. So, I mean, you got the full Jameis experience yesterday. You got some unbelievable throws. You got some boneheaded throws that went your way. And this is what it's like. You're going to live and die with this. And it is similar to the Joe Flacco experience from last year. But he has the arm strength and he has the moxie to overcome the turnovers. So if he throws a turnover, he's going to come right back the next possession and give you another big play. So, I mean, I give him an A-. The minus only because some of those throws were like, oh, but then he got away with it. And even if they lost that game, even if Kyle Hamilton picks off that pass, I still write the same column, and I still come in here today and say the exact same thing. Like, it didn't really change anything because you saw an actual bona fide NFL offense and what it's supposed to look like. I know we all forgot what that's supposed to look like, but that, whether you win or lose, that's how it's supposed to look.
Listen, look, I was sitting at the crib. It was the first game that me and my wife watched the game together. She's like, I can't do it. I'm gonna watch and see what Jameis Winston do. And by the way, McNuggets, do you have my tweet?
We do. You can take tagboard full here, Steve, if you want.
Here we go. Earlier on in the week, I said this. I'm excited and intrigued to see if Jameis Winston has what it takes to be a new wave bridge quarterback for the Browns. We also get a fresh perspective with Ken Dorsey calling plays, can evaluate Stefanski in the CEO role to see if they can fix the penalties, discipline, and clock management, and talked about that. That was on a Monday. We ready to go. What's going on?
Don't worry about it. There was a pause in there.
You missed it, no. It's fine. It's fine.
And Bull and I being the third graders that were made eye contact.
I could tell.
I was going to let it go, but I have children on each side
I
of me.
could tell.
Once Jay looked at me, I couldn't stop.
I could tell. You could tell that I ain't been here in a while. Even I didn't catch my own pauses. I was just like, I'm going to have to rewind the tape now. I got to watch that. I'm going to have to pause myself.
You got to catch that LG.
Yeah.
More ways than one.
Hold it. Hey, but listen, here's what I'm going to say, though. I'm going to say this, though. When you watch Jameis Winston, right, and you see 2 or 3 of those throws, The throw he made in the first quarter to a David Njoku, super elite. The touchdown pass where Njoku goes over top of a defender, super elite. I cannot wait till Sean King brings some of these passes up because we forgot what it looks like to throw the ball in sort of tight windows and to get it there. We saw some of the same things with Joe Flacco last year when he was throwing the football to Amari Cooper and some of those guys. And by the way, we see what happens when receivers believe you're going to get the rock. There was a play last week where Sean King talks about how Elijah Moore was dogging it on a clear-out route that he did not clear out fast enough and didn't run his route hard enough, and it muddied the picture up underneath so that when Deshaun Watson was trying to throw the football, that defender was still hanging on the underneath route. Guess what? Elijah Moore all of a sudden this week was fast. Guess what? Cedric Tillman all of a sudden this week knew what routes to run. I'm like, dang, when did they start running them? And the reason is, when you spread the ball around, when people is getting the ball, you never know when you might come out of your break and the ball is on its way. People, the ball has energy. The ball, when he moving around and spreading around, Nick Chubb is now back into the fray. And the offensive line. I thought Joe Batonio talked about it after the thing. He said some of the stuff that he was saying in the huddle was kind of strange, but kind of strange a little bit.
Did you see his pregame interview?
Bro. That was
bizarre.
But he invokes this energy level in you, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
he invokes, like, hey guys, listen, forget what we're doing. We're going 1-0. I thought he had an A+ game. We'll see what he comes back, and this is another one. We get another opportunity to see him next week, and hopefully he can stack the games together. Because if he wants to be an option for this team, he's going to have to stack them together. He's going to have to win more games. He's going to have to do other things. But for that game, for what they needed to do, playing Baltimore, A+ for me.
I'm at an A-. I'm with you. I couldn't quite get to the threshold of an A, but I'm a tough grader, I think, typically. And look, Kyle Hamilton, I don't know how you explain it. I don't know what his post-game comments were afterwards. That's a play we've made in the past, where the game's in our hands and we drop it. The Ravens don't do that. The Ravens aren't known for that. Hamilton's not known for that. Inexplicably, it hit him in the chest, and he dropped it. Now look, he's playing defensive back because he doesn't have hands. If that's clearly the case. I mean, if these guys had hands,
catch would be receivers.
You'd be monetizing them on offense as well. So it's not like a receiver that dropped the ball, but it was still stunning. He did everything well, and that's rare that you can say that with a quarterback in their first start in a new system in a meaningful game. Here's an interesting stat: 27 of 41, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Also, the game winner to Tillman, just after the 2-minute warning. He joins Baker Mayfield, Trent Dilfer, Kelly Holcomb as the only Browns quarterback since 1990 to top 300 yards with 3 touchdowns and no picks. Jeez. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's I don't know how many times Brady did that in a year. But for me, he was exactly what this team needed. Now, there is a slight concern, if I'm nitpicking, about what some of the guys talked about afterwards about, what was going on in the offensive huddle. His pregame interview was slightly off. I know that he's doing what he needs to do to motivate himself and get ready, but my hope is that he doesn't become a caricature of himself in that act. Just lead and play football. We don't need all the dramatic flair and that works sometimes. You got to pick your spots with that. If that's who you are all the time,
I feel like that's just Jameis though.
I get it, but here's the problem with that. If you speak in monotone 95% of the time, and then you raise your voice, you get everybody's attention. Mm-hmm. If you scream, yell, and preach all the time, how do you raise it to the next level? How do you get them to go up a notch when you need them to go up a notch?
I think the way he communicates, this is perfect. You look at Jim Schwartz. He's not too excited. Kevin Stefanski, not really excited.
No. I'm okay if you're at one level all the time and it's the composed. What I'm saying is I don't know how that rah-rah works when you're always there, and now all of a sudden it's 24-0.
Hey, I think Jameis Winston is exactly what they needed, because Deshaun Watson is the exact opposite of Jameis Winston. When you see Deshaun Watson and the way he communicates, it's not the same way. Yeah. It's very low key. It's very understated. He's not really vocal. What the Cleveland Browns need is that energy.
And gee, I agree with that, especially in that moment.
Yeah.
They needed him to walk across water and to put his hands out and say, "Follow me, children."
I think your point is 7 weeks from now, is it still going to work?
That's my question. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's why I said I'm looking forward. The biggest concern I have is, I've seen it before we see it a lot with quarterbacks that come in the middle of a game. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, they get struck by a bolt of lightning and the offense looks incredible. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that carries into the next week, and then all of a sudden that new starting quarterback reverts back, and you're like, wait, where's the magic? What happened? So what I'm saying is, it was exactly what they needed in this game at this time. But how does that play 3 or 4 weeks from now? How does that play 7 weeks from now? I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you guys are saying. I'm giving Jameis an A+ as well, and here's why. Even though it really doesn't make sense, because he could play even better than he did, certainly, and he played very well. But I'm grading it on a little bit of a sliding scale because of the particular situation. A number of things at play here. Number one, this team was playing, coming into this game, although they played a decent game on defense last week. They played pretty well. But overall as a team, they've looked as bad as any team in football until this week. So the fact that he kind of led the way for that, he gets extra credit points for that.
Sure.
Number two, he hadn't started a game in over 2 years. No. I mean, guy's barely been on the field.
Where's the rust?
Zero rust?
Same with Joe Flacco. We kept saying with Deshaun, well, now look, I know he's played 7 games, but before that he had a 2-year layoff. These guys come out and no rust.
But Flacco hadn't been with a team.
He was sitting on the couch.
Right, but it hadn't been 2 years since he started a game.
I don't know how long it had been.
It had been a year and change. Still a long time, but yes.
Long time.
This is even longer. And yet, yes, there were a handful of throws that were really bad. Most quarterbacks will make a handful of throws.
Decisions
that are really bad.
And physically they were bad.
But overall his play was fantastic. We have his throwing with anticipation. You're going to throw picks when you throw with anticipation, because sometimes the wide receiver's not on the same page with you. Sometimes the wide receiver, I saw this a couple of weeks ago when Joe Burrow got picked off. He was throwing with anticipation to Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase got kind of blocked on the play, so he couldn't get to the spot, and it led to an interception. But good quarterbacks are not afraid of those situations, and it's not going to stop them from being aggressive and making big throws. And every time he made a bad throw, he almost every time followed it up with a good play.
Yeah.
Because there was no fear. He wasn't scared to throw a pick. He wasn't thinking about the criticism from the fans or the media or any of that stuff. In terms of his shtick and whatever, the pregame interview, okay. I was like, oh, that's weird. But you know what? Who cares? Yeah. I have a friend of mine, diehard Browns fan, who goes, you think the players buy that? Because he goes, Jameis comes off as a big-time phony to me. Meanwhile, we got Steve Becker, texting, I'd run through a wall for Jameis. So everybody looks at these things differently. I believe, and I don't know this for sure, Jason, you're with the players a little bit, I think the players kind of buy what Jameis is selling. They kind of like it. Would it last for 5 years if he's crazy like this? I don't know. It's a half a season. The Browns had a half a season where they played pretty well with Greg Williams, who's a lunatic, and Freddie Kitchens, who turned out to be one of the worst head coaches ever. But for a half a season, we thought this guy was a genius as an offensive coordinator.
We all did.
As long as he keeps throwing the ball down the field, he can say whatever
That's
he wants.
it. He can be silly and goofy and whatever he wants to do.
But as soon as the problem with that is, as soon as his play starts to go down, now all of a sudden that stuff people.
Well, sure.
That's what they'll point to. Well, gosh,
but
he's crazy.
To your point, if the Browns would have gotten their ass kicked yesterday, how many people would have been on Twitter saying, well, why the hell is Myles Garrett dressed up as the Terminator?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
right.
But
because they won, and he didn't even play well. Myles Garrett didn't do anything.
No, he did not.
But nobody talked about it because they won.
I have a question for you that you're in the best position to answer because you watch every snap of their games. You've said a couple times this morning that, the Browns defense was already playing well. They played well against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And I thought that too.
Yeah.
I thought if you could put a lid on that defense, on that offense, you're doing pretty well. I didn't watch the game, so I don't know how the points unfolded.
Yeah.
But after looking at what happened yesterday in Philadelphia, I immediately harkened back to our performance, and I said, geez, were we good on defense, or are they just suddenly inept on offense?
Well, Jay, that's a perfect transition because we're talking defense next. So let me do a read and Bull can answer that very specific question for you. This defensive topic from the Browns is brought to us by Prize Picks and LinkedIn. Prize Picks, first, though, is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike on other apps with Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you get your money back in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game when you want. The segment's also brought to us by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for small businesses, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It has all the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free on LinkedIn. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours, so you can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
What I would say to answer Jay's question about, the Bengals offense is, no, they're not bad. The Bengals offense has been inconsistent, way too inconsistent for the talent they have on offense. Their defense is disgusting, and their coach is terrible.
Wow, they're a mess.
But their offense is fine. It's just been inconsistent. So
what did they score yesterday? It was
17. Well, it was 17-17 early in the third quarter.
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
I didn't follow it, so I don't know.
Yeah,
and they were without Higgins yesterday too, which I think makes a huge difference.
and they have not played well without Higgins. But by the way, it was the first game of the season I didn't watch. I actually didn't watch the game at all.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, because a lot of times, if the Browns and Bengals have mostly played at different times this year, when they play at the same time, I'll usually go back and watch the Bengals game after.
Okay.
When I didn't want to go back and watch it.
Right.
But so no, I'm not going to take away the credit for the Browns defense. I thought the Browns defense played very well last week. I thought they played very well this week. The difference was that the rest of the team played well this week, whereas the rest of the team did not play well the week before.
Do you guys agree with my premise that there was just an energy on every single man on the field that we haven't seen all year?
Yeah.
Guys were going the extra mile. They were making the extra effort. I saw a lot of effort. And your point to Myles Garrett, was he there?
Right.
I saw him before the game with a mask on. I didn't see him much during the game, which is stunning. Because if you would have told me he was going to be a non-factor, I would have thought, well, that's an L every time.
Well, think about this. The last drive of the game, the Browns scored the touchdown. There's still a minute left. It's Lamar Jackson.
Right? I was afraid it was too much time.
Yeah, sure. On that last drive, they did not have Denzel Ward. They did not have JOK.
Yeah.
And Myles Garrett was a non-factor. Mm-hmm. Those are by far their three best players on defense. And yet they still stopped them.
This is crazy. I think Jameis Winston, more than what he did on the field, he did off the field. Because you got to think about it. He also started, he galvanized people in the locker room when he came out and said what he said about Deshaun Watson. Now, watch what he did in 1 week. He said what he said about Deshaun Watson, and all hell broke loose. The fans went crazy. Mm-hmm. For about 3 or 4 days, it was Browns media, Browns fans, and Browns players all going at it, right? He then comes back in the locker room, and that brought everybody else together saying, look, we got to stick up for each other. Everybody in here is all for one for all. And it got people to have that, it's us versus everybody. Then the astute politician that he is, he said, let me go back out and mend these fences with these fans. He comes back and says, listen, this is the greatest fan base in the world. We got to play for these fans. We want you to come do your part. They come to the game. Fans are tremendous. Nothing happened. Then what he does is goes out, plays the game, wins against a rival. Then he gets back in front of the podium and says, you know what? This game was for the fans. This game was for the people that we got to show up every single day and put that energy so that they can cheer us on and make them proud. I said in one doggone week, people was mad at him. Mm-hmm. The team came together. They got the win, and the fan base is sitting here today with over 3,000 people in the chat talking about great job. Let's see what he can do next week. I think that's the astute politician that he is. And if he continues to keep winning football games, all that'll do is give people more and more buy-in.
And nothing else matters when you're winning football games.
Especially if it's
Fans
3:30.
really don't care about off the field, anything else. When you're winning football games, that's all we care about.
And that's why I think in the past, the fan base has always been divided. It's they're always sniping. It's this guy, not that guy. No, it's that guy, not this guy. That stuff bubbles up when you're losing.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I mean, I don't remember after the Flacco run, in the middle of the Flacco run, seemed like it was kumbaya. We were winning. Fans weren't screaming for Flacco. Everybody embraced him. Everything was great. Winning hides all the warts.
That's right.
And when you lose, they're popping up and spreading all over your body, and suddenly everything is bad. The fans are arguing with the players. The players are arguing with the media. The media's it's a nightmare. But now I do think, to your point, and it's a good point, in the last week, this team has gone through the cycle, man. Just think about the events that have taken place in the last 8 days around this football team.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Jason, do you think this defensive unit, though, is kind of rounding into shape of what we thought they could be before this season? It was a disappointing start, but these last 2 weeks have been promising.
Yeah, there was a stretch yesterday. It wasn't long, but there was a stretch yesterday where you were without both of your corners. Both Emerson and Denzel were getting checked for concussions, and you had Cam Mitchell and Greg Newsome on the field, and that's when Mark Andrews caught touchdown pass in the end zone was when Greg was on him. And thankfully, Emerson was able to come back. Obviously, we'll get to the Denzel situation. But they fought through adversity. There's no question this defense fought through adversity to lose, not only lose JOK, but to lose him in the fashion that they did.
Do we know what's going to happen with him?
I was told they think it's just like a concussion type thing, and everything else was precautionary.
Okay.
I was freaked out.
So that might be a week or two, and he might be back.
Yeah. Like I don't think it's anything devastating.
That's the hope.
I mean, but
But when you see your guy get wheeled out, strapped to a board, his face mask removed, strapped to a board, and wheeled off the field.
Did you read his lips? When I read it, I read his lip and it said, "I can't move." And I freaked out. Like I said, "Oh goodness," because like he was kind of laying there and his legs was limp, and I was just like.
Well, then he gave the thumbs up.
Then he gave the thumbs up, and then they said he had feeling in all his limbs. So I was excited about that.
To your earlier point about it felt like both sides tried to make amends for last week, as Jameis came out and somebody said afterwards about that was, I hope we gave you all what you wanted. When JOK was down, the fans immediately rose and were chanting his name, and it felt like it was sort of course they love JOK, of course you want him to be okay. But it was also a makeup.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they heard the criticism.
Hey, there's certain generals that's in the audience, right? There's certain guys that been season ticket holders for 80 years.
Yeah, get on your feet, let's go.
Get your ass up.
The world is watching.
Don't you play this week?
Yeah.
But that's from a football standpoint, it's frustrating because you feel like the defense is really coming into its own, and now assume at least a week there's going to be no Denzel and no JOK.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, the Denzel thing is terrifying, guys.
Now? We can talk about the injuries.
Yeah, I know you wanted to do a read. But
we'll do the read real quick, and then we can talk injuries, and then we'll get back
that's scary.
To the offense. If you want to see the Browns, the Cavs, a concert, any show in Cleveland, there's no better place to get your tickets online than with the Game Time app. And right now, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you want to see the Cavs host the Lakers on Wednesday or the Browns host the Chargers, you better be using Game Time to get your tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. JOK and Denzel both obviously questionable moving forward, but can the Browns defense sustain their level of play if those two guys are out for a significant portion of time? And are we going to see Denzel again? I think they're all fair questions.
I don't think they can keep up that level of play without both of them. What about you guys?
I don't either. No, I mean, those are two of the three biggest pieces on this defense.
And Miles hasn't looked like Miles most of the
And Miles has not been Miles.
Not
I'm afraid we're going to find out that when they lose that 7th or maybe 8th game, and I know inside information, you probably know more about this than I do, just from a distance looking from the outside, I would think he's going to say, okay, I got to have whatever surgeries I have to have.
Yeah.
I don't want to risk the entirety of my career playing in games that absolutely definitively mean nothing.
Right.
We keep saying that the season is over. It is not.
Mathematically,
of course it's not.
Right.
You're 2-6. Half of the hay is in the barn. You would to have any chance at all, you would likely have to win 8 of your last 9 games. I think once you get to 8 losses, a 9-8 could sneak in. I just don't see it this year in this division the way things
their
are
odds of going 8-1 or better are probably 1% or less.
I don't see it happening. So,
but you never know until you're eliminated.
Right, and now with JOK and Denzel most likely out for at least 1 and possibly more, I'm afraid that with that next loss or 2, Miles is going to shut it down, pay attention to his feet, get whatever surgeries that he's needed, and then we're already talking about maybe next year. But I don't see them performing the way they have the last couple of weeks with those 2 pieces. And a bigger part to this is we're getting into a territory now with Denzel. I don't know if this is definitively true. Maybe you guys have heard something or read something. I know that I've heard doctors in the past say that the brain and the injuries to the brain are somewhat like ankle sprains. You know how when you sprain your ankle that first time, it's like the seal's broken.
Yeah.
And you're much more likely to sprain it again and again and again, and then you're known as a guy that has weak ankles and he's prone to the ankle sprains. So I've been told, and in fact, Bernie, I once asked Bernie, because Bernie estimates he's had over 50 concussions.
Sure.
He said back in my day it was called getting your bell rung.
Yeah, sure.
And he said that happened to me all the time. We also had a code of sequence that you would try to remember on numbers on how many fingers I'm holding up so I could keep playing. That was the old concussion test, guys.
I remember Al Toon having a concussion and coming back in the second quarter.
Second quarter, here I am, I'm concussed. Now, we've come a long way since then, but Bernie and I've had others in the medical field tell me the same thing, that first concussion sort of breaks the seal. And then you're more prone to have a second one. And they also said that they come in shorter increments in time between them.
Well, he's had 4 in about 2 years.
And that is, like, we're getting into an area, and I know Denzel was asked this question after his last one, and he kind of shucked it off and said, look, I'm a football player. I'm going to come back. I'm going to play. At some point, guys like Denzel and guys like Tua are going to have to do a serious examination as to how important football is in the grand scheme of their lifetime health.
But we say that, and it makes sense. But they're 20-something-year-old football players.
Bull, I'm wondering if ultimately that decision isn't made by someone other than him. The league has to clear the player. They have to clear the player.
Yeah, I can't. You heard Tua's press conference.
I heard
he was defiant.
Listen, these guys are warriors. That's what they've known their whole life, and their financial security is tied to that.
And there's no. I was actually reading about this yesterday because everybody talks about 6 concussions.
Yeah.
Like, is there a difference when if you've had 8 or you've had 4? Well, so I did some research.
Yes.
Just reading some articles about it, and the prevailing belief is that yes, the more concussions you have, the worse it is for you.
Yes.
However, they do admit that there's no set number. It's not like you hit number 6 and
everybody's different.
And the severity of them is different as well.
What's that?
The severity.
That's the other thing they talk about. It's not just how many, it's how severe they are.
To your question, which was the right one to research, because I've done this as well, and I remember talking to the woman who runs the Boston University Brain Trauma Center.
Yeah.
She's on the forefront, cutting edge of all of this research. We interviewed her once. This was when concussions were first becoming an issue, and I interviewed her once on Cold Pizza, and that was the line of questioning.
Yeah.
Look, do we know definitively that the second and the third and the fourth are any more damaging long-term than the first?
Right.
And what she was supposing at the time, and I don't know, this was over 10 years ago. I don't know if there's subsequently been research that disproves this. But her theory at the time was the enzyme that is present in those that have died with CTE. The theory was that enzyme is perhaps actually the healing component to the brain injury. And the more that it's there, so in other words, the more the brain is concussed, the more
it has to heal.
It is likely that this enzyme is present in volume.
Right.
And so now, the tricky thing is, to your point, everybody's different.
Yeah.
And the only way you know that CTE is there is through an autopsy.
That's right.
There's yet no test that can detect it in the living. They're working hard on that, and that will change the game. When that happens, that will change the game.
Some people, I look at it like this, man. I ain't never made no money in no NFL. You talk about Tyvis, right? Tyvis still has dreams of playing football. Like, not dreams like, hey, I'm going to do this one day. Like Like almost nightmares. Like not nightmares, but thinking about, that's what you think about. To this day, I ain't played a snap of football in 20 years, and I still dream about football games. For these people, they're wired different. Like those people, that is what they were put on the planet to do. And so they're not going to willfully say, I'm not going to play. That's just like saying, like,
some guys have.
Some
very rare.
Most guys
You know what? The guys that do become headline news.
Yeah, right.
Because there's only been a handful of guys in their prime that stepped forward and said, this isn't for me.
And Andrew Luck's really the only huge name,
Big
right?
Barry Sanders.
Yeah. I mean, people.
Barry Sanders.
Was that because of concussions?
Oh, not concussions. I just meant walking away from the
Calvin
game.
Johnson retired young. Also,
you know, but
Brown.
Some of those people don't have the financial means to just be like, okay, I'm done. Now, quarterbacks obviously is a little different.
Yeah.
But if you're a linebacker or a guy that's playing fullback or tight end, you running down on kickoff.
Yeah.
Good luck telling that dude, hey, go ahead and stop your money.
Yeah.
And you got 2 young kids. Nah, they ain't doing that. They'll say, I'll worry about that when they get there. I'll worry about that when I'm done playing.
Denzel's not going to stop. He's going to come back. He's proven that time and time again. I mean, I don't know how much good it actually is, but a guardian cap should be mandatory at this point for whatever help it is. I think for any player to come back from
how
concussion,
could it ultimately help, though? The brain is moving inside your head.
Do you guys remember Sean Springs?
Yeah.
Noted quarterback for Ohio State, had a brilliant NFL career as well. Wonderful kid. I call him a kid because when I met him at Ohio State, he was. He's been involved with, it might be Rydell, he's been involved with a helmet manufacturer for years, and they're trying to develop the perfect helmet. If you notice, a lot of the helmets now have the cutouts. The purpose for that pad is the same for the purpose of the cutout. They're trying to get something else to absorb the inertia, the energy of the collision. So those cutouts, if they move a fraction of an inch, that's helping it, because the concussion occurs when the brain slams against the skull.
Right.
So if you have anything else to cushion the power of that, then that absorbs the energy of the blow and not the brain.
All right.
So there are a lot of things that they're doing. I've had guys tell me that are in that field, if you think that our helmet protocol isn't working, let's just go ahead and put the old solid shells back on players and see what happens.
Yeah.
So
it's better, right?
I'm wondering.
And maybe at least
It is
less
better.
severe concussions.
And what I would do, I to your point, I would mandate as the league, if you're concussed twice in a 12-month span, you're playing the next 12 months at least with
the guardian cap.
With the guardian cap.
That should make everybody
It just
wear them.
it might come to that, Bull.
It may come
You
to
said
that.
you're wondering what?
I'm wondering, totally different level, but where I'm going with this is a different level, not you. When you practice, did you have headaches after practice?
Bro, like, I used to think that maybe I used to have headaches every single day.
See, there you go. And listen, I'm not trying to compare
It's not
eighth grade football to the pros, but I make my son wear a guardian cap in football practice. I bought one for him.
Is
I
he the
make him wear it.
minority?
What's that?
Is he the minority?
Oh, there's like 2 of them. There's 2 or 3 of them that wear it. That's it.
Well,
in
good
8th grade.
move out of you.
But I asked AJ, I said, do you notice the difference? And he said, yeah, I don't have headaches anymore. He said, I used to have headaches after practice all the time, and I don't have headaches anymore. Again, it's 8th grade. It's not NFL. But
There's still collisions,
it's
though.
still collisions. It's still helmet to helmet. It's still.
I'm stunned that they haven't mandated for high school football yet. That they all
I
wear.
wonder if it's coming.
I feel
found
like it is.
I found it really revealing that he told me I don't have headaches anymore after practice. That's why I was wondering if you did.
I remember, like, it was almost back in the day, like, they not brainwashed, but you just figured that that's what it was. Like,
That's the price you pay.
Like, I remember not playing football till I was 14 or whatever. And when I started playing, I'm like, man. And my dad would be like, listen, good luck, because now you playing, your body ain't never going to be feeling great like it used to. And I just thought, like, okay, well, you get headaches and it's part of the game. And then, you never really think about it. And then people start talking about concussions. You're like, I mean, I wonder how many of those did I have? Because you never really thought about it. And, like, you just don't, like, Dustin, I talk about Dustin. Dustin talks about it all the time. He's a great person to talk to it about it. Like, because you start to see, when I had my neck injury, I thought it was the concussion stuff. Like, because I used to get these headaches and then found out that, I didn't get screwed by CTE. It was just the vertebrae in my neck that got completely trashed. But, some of the players like Dustin, I remember him saying, like, yeah, man, I don't feel right. And I'm like, what you mean you don't feel right? He said, it just I don't know how to explain it. And at that time, we didn't know nothing about CTE or whatever the concussion game is. And so, my heart goes out to Denzel Ward. He's going to keep playing. I think, to your point, Jason, I think the league is going to have to start mandating certain things.
Because they're not going to do it on their own.
They're not going to just wake up and say, hey, let me get that little ugly little hat thing.
We were joking about with Tyvus. Tyvus like, man, that looks ridiculous.
Right.
I ain't wearing that. And that's look good, feel good, right? It's a real thing.
But if everybody had them on, it's like almost like school clothes and school uniforms.
It's almost like school uniforms.
If everybody's wearing them, it is what it is.
Yeah.
In this one case, I don't think the league has plenty of responsibility in most areas. This is about the players' union, not about the league. The players' union...
I think they're hand in hand on this one, Bull.
Right, but if the league went to the players' union and said, hey, we want to make these mandatory, the players' union will fight against it because the players don't want it.
They would have to bargain it.
Yeah, it would have to be negotiated.
And that's crazy.
But
this is one of those things where the parent is the league and the child is the player. And the child's role is to be, or the parent's role in that relationship is to protect the child from hurting himself.
Here's how it can
You're
work,
the league, and you've told your son you're going to wear it.
But the league has shown time and time again they don't care about the players.
This is a safety issue, though. So for once, the league would be on the right side of this.
Yes. Because they would say, listen, we have a concussion settlement. The money is available for people with CTE. If you do not wear this protection, you're going to forfeit your eligibility and being able to get some of that money if it happens.
And who's the president of the Player Association? J.C. Treader. And what's he on all the time? Player safety, player safety, player safety, player safety.
Yeah.
They've dialed back OTAs. They've dialed back hitting on the field. They've dialed all this stuff back. Why not?
And many of them wear them in practice.
All the time.
Yeah.
So my point to that is, I think anecdotally, if you go around and ask these players, so tell me about the collisions with the pads on compared to the hard shell helmet. Now, look, I know they're not hitting as viciously in practice as they are in the games, but if there's a scintilla of 1% of a chance that these would reduce concussions and improve the long-range mental health of every player in the league, you put them on.
Yeah.
Just like a seatbelt. I've worn a seatbelt my whole life. I've needed it 3 times. Glad I had it on.
Yeah.
Now, the 10,000 times that I put it on and didn't need it, it just becomes habit. You just live with it.
Well,
it is what it is.
It's insane to me, this is in a similar vein, that in Ohio, I believe, you do not have to wear a helmet when you're on a motorcycle.
You do not.
That's correct.
Which is crazy.
It is crazy to me.
Yep.
It is crazy
nuts.
to me. Even crazier, when I rode a motorcycle in states where you didn't have to have a helmet on, I didn't wear one.
Yeah.
And every time I lived in a state where you had one, there was a helmet law, I wore it. And I didn't care.
Yeah.
I would have much rather been without it because I'm a knucklehead.
Jay, you live a dangerous life, man.
Hey, I spent time in the hospital when I was 16 from a terrible dirt bike accident. And you'd think that I would have learned. And the doctor told me the foot peg ended up going in my ribs and fracturing all my ribs. He said, if it was up to your temple, you're dead.
Wow.
You're dead. And so you'd think me hearing that, I'd be like, I'm never getting on a motorcycle again without a helmet.
So you jump out of planes, ride dirt bikes.
I live on the edge, G-Bush.
Pitch when you're 65, 30, 70 years old.
Live on the edge, brother.
God forbid he has one piece of shrimp.
This is
One piece of shrimp, any seafood.
Any seafood.
that's wild.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's switch back to the offensive side of the football. You guys can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com/UCSS to join today. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Guys, we saw Ken Dorsey call plays for the Browns on Sunday for the first time in the Kevin Stefanski era. It wasn't Kevin Stefanski calling the plays. The Browns obviously put up their best offensive performance of the season. From a schematic standpoint, from a route concept, all the incorporated, did you notice a big change in the offense with Ken Dorsey calling plays from when Kevin Stefanski was calling plays?
I didn't.
I didn't at all, no. This was the same offense we saw with Joe Flacco last year, so I guess it was a little different from what we saw with Watson, only because Watson wouldn't throw the ball downfield. If it looked different, it was because of that. I said about a month ago that I thought Kevin Stefanski should give up play calling, but it had nothing to do with the play calling for me.
It had to do with the guy that was running the play.
Well, no. What I'm saying is the reason I wanted Kevin Stefanski to give up the play calling, yes, although I agree with what you said, is because I felt like Kevin Stefanski, for the first time in his career, was doing a poor job with clock management, timeout management, and that's why I wanted him to give up play calling, not because I think Ken Dorsey's a better play caller. I just thought Stefanski needed to focus on the bigger picture. And I thought we saw that yesterday. I thought we saw a situation where he was able to focus on the bigger picture. It's one game. Next week he might do a terrible job with that. Who knows? But in terms of the play calling, in my opinion, and none of us know for sure, I think that was almost a non-factor in this game.
I didn't see anything we hadn't previously seen before.
The only thing that you missed was some of the crazy try and trick bag plays.
We could do without those.
And like you didn't see, and the people I talked to in Buffalo said Ken very much is a believer in running backs run the ball, receivers catch the ball, quarterbacks throw the ball. Like he's not into the gadgets, and you really didn't see any gadget plays. Other than that, it looked like the exact same offense. There was guys open down the field, just like there was guys open last week and the week before. You just had a quarterback who could get it there. That's the only difference. But to your point, I did talk to people in the locker room who felt like Kevin popped his head last week into meetings that he wasn't previously in, whether it's offensive line,
that's
defensive line,
interesting.
I think that was good. It was good for him.
He was in different meetings.
Because he has more time.
And I talked to one person who said he felt more relaxed, like he looked more relaxed.
Yeah, I thought he looked way more relaxed on the side. It was great to see his face instead of hiding behind the Denny's menu.
And he was still on the headsets. I'm sure he was involved in the play calling, no doubt.
And like it's little, right? It's minor. But I saw him during a break. The defense goes under the benches and they go in, and he stuck his head in the defensive huddle just for a second.
Yeah.
And then he's back. But you never saw that before because he's on the sideline.
Right.
I don't care whatever he wants to do. I think he's earned the opportunity to call the plays if he wants to call the plays. He's great at it. I think he's very good at it. If he wants to go this route and feels like this is better for him, so be it. I talked to somebody in the organization yesterday who said he could be a head coach. Like he was a head coach yesterday, and he had his finger on a bunch of different things. So they're going to go with this for the rest of the season. It sounds like certainly they're not going to change now after 1 week, after the success that they've had. But the plays themselves, it didn't look any different to me.
I'm a big believer in empowering the people around you. I'm a big believer in, I think to a large extent, the whole thing in the marriage with Deshaun Watson, I thought Kevin Stefanski was just wearing too many hats. Just like, he was trying to have his finger on everything. And it's hard to do everything well. Like when you're sitting here trying to think of a scheme 4 or 5 plays ahead, seeing what the defense is doing, that means you don't have time to talk to the quarterback on the bench as much. That means you don't check in with the defense and say, hey, what are they giving us with Jim Schwartz? You don't have time to think about, hey, if we get inside this territory, we're going to kick the field goal, get the field goal team ready. All of those little things, like I think it was weighing on him. And like when you see Dorsey, and I thought this was a really cool thing because Jameis Winston talked about it. He said the reason he came to Cleveland was because he wanted to run plays under Kevin Stefanski. And when he came out and said that he was going to change the play call, and he went and talked to Stefanski and said, hey, like what's going on with this? What are we doing here? And he sat down and had a great conversation with Kevin Stefanski. Him and Dorsey had a conversation, and I thought it was really cool that at the end of the game, you take a look at what they had, and there was a time where he throws an out pass. They needed, I think it was 3rd and 7 or something. They throw this out pass, and Jameis Winston lets it go before Elijah Moore gets out of a break. He catches the ball first down there by the goal line before they scored. And he said, were you kind of, surprised that, in the press conference, were you surprised that, hey, you guys were being aggressive? And he said, listen, Ken says this. He said he's been saying it since he got here. He said, we get an opportunity, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to go down being aggressive, and that was a case of a play in which he was aggressive. So, look, I give Kevin Stefanski all the credit in the world for sometimes relinquishing something and empowering other people in your staff to do things, because I believe that once you empower people in other circumstances, you can grow for a better or bigger purpose. So to me, the offense obviously is going to be the same, some of the same similarities, because Kevin and Ken work together on offense a lot. So I think a lot of it is similar, but I do like sometimes a fresh set of eyes on something could give you a little boost. We'll see if they can continue to have that same little boost moving forward.
By the way, real quick, Jay, It is funny, though, because, we talk about being aggressive, and I love being aggressive, and I love that they, after the near interception, that they threw deep again. But you know damn well that had that been held on to for a pick, that half the fan base would have said, you should have just run the ball and kicked the field goal. Yeah. That would have been
it's so much easier when you have the benefit of the results.
I don't know that you can trust the kicker from that range.
I agree, but that would have been the reaction from
probably. But I was telling Zach, you can't, you got to go.
No,
you can't trust him right now.
And 2-6, and I'll say this: for 2-6, if you're gonna be aggressive, the time to be aggressive is now.
What do you got to lose?
And it wasn't just about trusting the kicker for me. If you kick a field goal, you can lose by a field goal, and their kicker's better than our kicker.
Right.
That's why I was saying, no, field goals get you beat. You go for the touchdown.
Yeah. And you see where they ended up. They could have kicked the field goal at the end of the game. Baltimore drove the ball down the field.
If they were down 1 or 2, they might have had a shot. They would have. They would have made that field goal.
They might have defended differently. So
Perhaps. But
Lamar is so freaking good.
Oh, he's one of one.
So freaking good.
He is unbelievable. I'll tell you, and I don't want to get too far off track quickly, but Jaden Daniels is that Hail Mary yesterday there were so many incredible things about it.
How about just the distance of the
He threw it 70 yards.
70 yards.
But the other thing that was impressive was, and I'd like to get a clock on what Lamar's scramble time was before his final throw. He scrambled there were 13 seconds. Now, granted, they only rushed 3, and that was, I think, where they killed themselves. That and the fact that the defensive back was taunting with the Washington crowd.
That was crazy.
That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. And you know what? If he doesn't fall on the sword today in the meeting and with players.
Oh, he already did. On social media. He already went social media and said, I'll learn from this.
He's out of the building otherwise.
Yeah.
But back to the play calling. Didn't see a big difference. They didn't change offense. At no point did we hear, okay, we're changing our offense now. They never said that. The playbook is what the playbook is. What you choose to dial up in certain situations is the impact that the play caller has on the game. I don't know that Stefanski would have dialed up the deep ball after the near pick. I don't know.
We'll never know.
I tend to think he wouldn't.
He could have shut it down,
because with a very small sample size of Dorsey really paying attention to him now, he's much more of a card player than Stefanski was. Stefanski was pretty safe for the most part.
I need to go back and look at that play. Are we certain that Cedric was the primary?
No, I'm not.
Because he was so open.
He was so open. It might have been a secondary read.
I tweeted out the end zone angle of it. I wish we could show it here. We could show it on Friday, but that's it. I'm not sure he's the primary, but he certainly was running a route that Jameis was looking at. Jameis starts with his head to the left and then comes back center.
Who else was in that route tree? I don't even remember.
I don't either.
I can tell you right now. Hold on one sec. Moore and Jeudy were on the field. And Njoku was there, but
if
he
it
starts
wasn't the
looking
play
to his
call,
left. And
kudos to Jameis.
Well, I'm just saying,
I think it's a second progression because he starts looking left as soon as he becomes center.
Yeah,
and I would think that would probably be the case too, because you want something safe and sure.
Right.
And if safe and sure isn't there, then if something else is there and it's a feels like a sure thing, take it.
You bring up a good point. I just wonder if that was the call. Like, would Kevin have called the deep ball? Well,
they were asked in post game about the call itself?
No,
that might be a Wednesday
I go straight
question.
to the locker room. I wasn't in the post. I don't go to Kevin.
I don't necessarily believe that Kevin would have done that. I mean, he goes for fourth downs more than anybody.
Right.
No.
He's not
in those
conservative
situations,
coach.
he is a gunslinger, and I think that's the input of the analytics department, what they've had on Kevin. All that being said, I'll say this. Carl Willis is the pitching coach for the entire Cleveland Guardians staff. Why is it that one day starter A can look like Cy Young, and the next day starter B looks like he belongs in the minor leagues, but in their next starts, A might look awful and B looks like Cy Young? It's more than anything, guys. It's about execution. I remember play callers used to say, I heard Bill Parcells was the first one I ever heard him say this, but it's been said a lot. Maybe he wasn't the first one to say it. Guys, every play is drawn up to score a touchdown.
Yeah, sure.
We don't have a play in our book. I went through and I looked at every one of them. We don't have a play in our book that's designed to fail. What makes a successful play? Execution. Now, there are situations where the play calling is paramount, but no play call works without proper execution. And the reason I would have loved to have seen what would have happened with Jameis and Kevin is because now we would definitively be able to say, with all the certainty in the world, and I'm still there, that Deshaun was the problem. That was it. You took him out and everything got better.
You know what happened? I'm going to tell you this. Kevin Stefanski is an astute politician as well. Shout out to you. You are very smart. That dude ain't dumb. He must have been studying the great Roman leaders back in the day. You know what he did? It's always better to give something up before somebody take it. He comes in and says, all right, well, let me look at the lay of the land right now. Right now, I'm attached to Deshaun Watson. Right now, I'm attached to that play on the field. He comes in and says, you know what? Let me go ahead and give Ken Dorsey a shot, a look at it. If Ken Dorsey plays well and Jameis Winston play well, he not only gets credit for making the decision to get the plays over, he looks like he's omnisciently, he understands that, hey, he looks like he's self-deprecating and he's putting the team first. And if it doesn't work out,
take it back over.
He could take it back over next year.
Yeah.
If it don't work out, he said, "I was just trying something.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do what's best for the entirety of the team."
Does
even
he
taking
get
the play
credit
call.
for that? Because
Yes.
I still have 2 questions, and I'll ask them all to each of you. Question 1: whose decision was it to keep 4 on the field?
You'll never know it.
I know, but I'm asking, what do you think?
I think his hand was forced.
I will base it on what I know to be true from the Baker situation, that ownership was driving them to continue to play Baker because they had to
And
make
you're
a
the most
decision.
informed on the panel because you've got those inside contacts.
Because they had to make a decision on Baker's contract, so they kept
Understood.
playing him through the injury.
So do you think it was Haslam and the ownership group making the decision to play Deshaun?
Oh, listen, come on.
I think that too.
We're going to get to this later. Like, I don't know why people say, why was he still playing? It's very obvious. I gave this man all this money and it's guaranteed he going to play.
Yeah, and I think that
That's
too.
what's going to pop off.
We got to get something out of it.
Yeah.
We got to get
Second
something on
question
a return.
that I'm curious to get your answers to. To the public, Kevin stood up and said, I'm stepping back. Now, it's contrary to everything this man has said in his 4 years here. I love play calling. I'm not giving up play calling. I love it. I love it. I'm not going to give it up. That's the one thing I love about my job. Do you think that was Kevin's decision or from ownership?
I feel like I'm being inconsistent, but I'm going to say that was his decision.
Okay, what do you think?
I don't know. I
If you had to venture a guess?
When it was first announced last week, I thought it was forced on him.
Yeah.
And then after poking around and talking, the one thing that makes sense is there were so many fires across the entire offense that he had to dive in. And I just talked about how he stuck his head into different meetings. So that's where I don't.
So he finally just reached that tipping point.
Yeah.
All my other children are leaving the flock as I'm chasing down one.
My initial reaction was I thought it was taken from him.
Okay.
Now I truly
no, that's
don't.
fair.
But
Do you think it was management or Kevin?
Listen, I think it was Kevin. I think he astutely said, I'm too close to the fire here. Listen, there's no need to be me being attaching myself to these play calling situations. If the Browns look terrible the rest of the season and he's still calling plays, what does that look like? The optics are you are part of the issue, but if you step back, you let people do their job, and you clean up some of the other stuff. He said, if I could stop the penalties, if I could get the guys to play well, if I could get them to play with some energy and effort, people will say, well, the team didn't quit. Kevin gave.
He does get credit for that.
He gets credit.
For
and,
sure.
And every now, they're going to forget that Deshaun Watson came out of the game because of the injury. Don't forget that in 2 weeks if they still keep playing well. He'll eventually get credit for playing Jameis Winston, and he'll get credit for letting Dorsey call the plays, and he'll get credit.
I disagree with that. I won't forget that it took an injury.
No, Jay.
I hold a grudge. And I won't forget that,
As you should.
that despite being led to the water and pushing their head down into the water in the midst of a drought, they refused to take a
You know
drink.
who else ain't going to forget? Myles Garrett, because they
Miles
wasted
won't
another
forget either,
season
and all
off
the
his
veterans
prime.
on that team won't forget.
And
They're
Joel
gonna-
Bitonio
in
ain't
fact,
gonna
you
forget.
lose credibility points because of the way it unfolded. If finally Kevin had said enough is enough, he would have had some credibility build off of that move.
But here's what he's doing. They won't forget it. There's a reason why he has to go mend those relationships. What better way to do that than say, listen, here, take this over. Let me talk and walk these dudes through this rough season. I know it's a rough season, guys, but keep holding the rope.
Start winning.
Start keep investing.
Jay, the reason that I asked those 2 questions is because ultimately I believe this. The Deshaun Watson move was the worst move in NFL history.
Yes.
And we used to call it a trade, but it was
Transaction.
it was complicated.
It's the worst.
I'm saying it is definitively for me now the worst trade because
I agree
the
with you.
Herschel Walker trade didn't. I mean, yes, it had a negative impact on the Vikings.
Didn't wreck
but
the Vikings.
that trade was bad only because of what it led to for Dallas, who, by the way, was already building.
It was more great for the Cowboys than terrible for the
yes.
Vikings.
Now,
Herschel Walker
so-
was still a good player for the Vikings.
Exactly, and it's not like it tore the Vikings franchise to the ground.
This
like
may be the
one did.
worst transaction in sports history.
I listen. I've said that to some, and they're like, "Oh, that's going too far."
If you combine it with the contract,
right?
What's worse?
So it's arguably the worst in sports history. Someone has to be on a cross for that. Someone has to pay the price for that.
Yeah.
Was it Barry driving that train? Was it Stefanski driving that train? Now, if Stefanski is going to stand up and take the bullet for keeping him in play, then I'm saying, when in the history of the sport has a coach sat on a seat that got hotter after a huge unexpected win? Maybe yesterday. And I say that because now, if we're to believe Kevin that it was his decision, I have zero faith in his ability to analyze the most important position in sports. He told us, he lied to us, in your words.
Yeah.
He told us 4 gave us the best chance to win. We saw with our own eyes all season that was a lie.
That's not true.
Yesterday it was proven. So to my point is, they have to find out internally, and Jimmy knows the answer to this, and so does Andrew, and so does Kevin. They need to figure out who was carrying the flag on the Deshaun Watson awful move. That is a fireable offense. I know you can't fire the owner, so if it was the owner, he's off the hook. But if there was one person in that hierarchy that was demanding that they go make this move, that person needs to be gone.
McNuggets, you got to read.
Yeah, but we're just going to get to this right now. We're going to do it later. We're just going to get to it right now after a quick word from Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, it's just you against the numbers on Prize Picks. Plus, Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. The best part, you don't even have to win to receive the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game when you want. We're going to do this a little later, but let's get right to it because you brought it up, Jay, and that is AOK. Jason, you wrote an article yesterday in The Athletic. If you haven't read it, go check it out. Subscribe. It's a very, very good deal. Jason got me the hookup. It's a very, very good deal. About the Browns waiting this long to make the move and why. And even after a win, Jason kind of put their feet to the fire. And Jason, you could explain the article, but I guess the big question is, why did they wait so long to make this change at quarterback?
I think they're trying to get a return on their investment. I think it's pretty obvious, but it was evident. It was evident by the end of September it was broken. It was not going to work. So you had a choice to make at the end of September. You could keep driving off this cliff and trying to get something out of your money, or you could look at the other 52 guys in that locker room and say, we're committed to you guys. Let's try and salvage this season. It didn't have to go as – do you realize they didn't have their first lead in the month of October until that field goal to make it 3-0 at the start of the game? That was their first lead in the entire month of October. It didn't have to be that way. They chose to do it that way. And yes, I understand. You want to give Deshaun every opportunity to make this work. I totally get it. That's why Jay and I disagreed. I sat here adamantly and said, you can't bring Joe Flacco back. You can't do it. It will divide the locker room. You have to put all of your resources into Deshaun. And although I disagreed with the decision to fire AVP, I understood the concept behind it of trying to make Deshaun more comfortable, trying to fit the offense around him. I totally got it. When you got through all of training camp, all of preseason, the entire month of September, and it was a disaster, and he was the worst quarterback in the history of these metrics, after a month against the easy teams in the easy part of the schedule, what more evidence did you need that he was broken and it wasn't going to work? And you kept doing it anyway, and you kept doing it anyway, and it cost you a season of Myles Garrett's prime, and it cost you another season of Joel Bitonio's prime, and all these other guys, whoever else you want to throw out there, it costs another season off their primes. And for what? To try and prove a point on the money that you already knew was dead. It's dead. Figure it out and move on. It's going to hurt. You know it's going to hurt. But it's better than the alternative of to keep trying to push this boulder up this hill that you knew was just going to keep rolling over top of you.
There's part of me that says, well, Jason, you're not winning a Super Bowl with Jameis Winston either, so what's the difference? But when you make the playoffs and had Jameis play, Now, we don't know how Jameis is going to play the rest of the year. He may play crappy the rest of the year.
I'm not sure Jameis plays the rest of the year, but that's an entirely different conversation.
Okay, but
If he plays like this, he will.
If he plays like,
let's say they get this kind of quarterback play, this level of quarterback play the rest of the season. Well, they'll end up winning 6 games or 7 games. They'll not make the playoffs. And had they started Jameis a month ago, maybe they would have won 9. Maybe they would have won 10. I will never know. But, and we've spent a lot of time arguing, like, who's to blame? Was this Kevin's decision? Was it Jimmy's decision? Ultimately, from our perspective, it doesn't really matter. I know it does matter, but it doesn't matter in terms of this. It was an organizational failure. So whoever's to blame specifically in the moment doesn't really matter. It was
You don't want to make a change at that position, or do you want to keep empowering
I would.
that person?
If I knew that Paul DePodesta or Andrew Berry or even Kevin Stefanski, who I do not want to fire most of all, if I knew it was all on them, yes, I would consider it. Now, to be fair, I think most people around the league thought Deshaun Watson was going to be great. And he's just whatever. He's mentally screwed up, whatever it may be. Who knows. But the point is that it was just so mishandled to not make this quarterback switch. It was such an obvious decision. Because Jameis Winston is a competent NFL quarterback, and as you said, Deshaun Watson is the worst quarterback in football. It's not even debatable. And that just showed you. It showed you that even with mistakes that Jameis Winston made, even with injuries, even with trading away their best wide receiver, they looked like a good football team against a team that had been playing great football. They just destroyed the Buccaneers last week. The Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield. Nobody's been a bigger supporter of Baker than me.
Who, by the way, took a step back without his 2 best receivers yesterday.
Now, listen.
Still played okay, but
Baker has thrown 7 picks in his last 10 quarters. That's hideous. But
it's awful.
I'm still going to say, I actually thought he played pretty well yesterday.
You know, their defense has given up 16 touchdown passes
stinks.
in 4 weeks.
It's awful, and Baker's a decent quarterback. Baker is what Jameis was. I was actually saying this to Jason before the show. I don't want to go too far off. Baker is what Jameis was.
Yeah.
A lot of touchdowns.
A lot of picks.
Yeah. You win 8-9 games. You maybe make the playoffs, but ultimately it's going to cost you against a good team the picks, and that would be the same thing with Jameis. But it was a dereliction of duty by the entire organization to not play. You saw how inspired the players were playing with Jameis. You talked about the energy, whatever it is, whatever that intangible might be.
Yeah.
These guys had energy when they played with Flacco. They had no energy with Watson, and now they have energy again with Winston.
It's pretty obvious.
I look at it like this. I'm just a realist. When they gave him that bag of money, they was going to pay him hell or high water. That's just what it was going to be.
Well, they had to. It's guaranteed.
It's guaranteed.
You mean play him?
They're going to play him.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
they were going to play him this year regardless.
Yeah.
What we got, it's the sinuses.
That must be what's going on.
Yeah, the sinuses.
Struggling with the L's today.
The L's.
Taking the L's.
The L's, man. But I will say that they were going to play him, and guess what? You got lucky. You lucked up. Yeah. And I don't want to say it's lucky or that I'm benefiting from someone else's injury. But Deshaun Watson, that chess piece got taken off the board. And when that chess piece got taken off the board, that's the way sports works. Sometimes you're playing great, and it could be a 2016 or 14 version where Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love get hurt. Those pieces get taken off the board, and you know what it is. Sometimes they get taken off the board, and it helps you out a little bit in terms of you get a chance to see some other people play. I think of it like this. Instead of me thinking about, okay, yes, it's the worst trade, it's up there. I mean, it's hard to argue any of that, right? But I'll look at what's the recourse. You go back and look at what the 49ers did. They had Jimmy Garoppolo. When they went and got Trey Lance in 2021, they traded a first-round pick in 2021, first-round pick in 2022, a third-round pick in 2022, and another first-round pick in 2023. 3 firsts and 1 third. And it was Trey Lance. They were in position to win. They were positioned to do it right now. Just think about what they could have done with those picks added to what they already had the roster.
But they didn't double down and pay crazy money.
But what they did was Kyle Shanahan said, you know what? We can either pout about this or cry about it, or we can cut bait today, figure that out, and I'll go ahead and save the franchise by identifying the true quarterback. All of this happens, to me, all of this happens where we are today with Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield. All of this happens when you miss. If you miss on a quarterback, all hell is going to break loose.
And they didn't just miss; they missed.
In
historic
and they
fashion.
missed twice.
And look at Carolina, right? That trade to get Bryce, that they traded away, and you
missed.
They screwed up.
You missed.
The exception is if you're so good on the fringes, as you like to say, and you're hitting with everything else, you can be like the San Francisco 49ers and miss historically on Trey Lance, and then luck up or skill up, whatever you want to call it.
That's Brock Purdy.
But they fell into Brock Purdy, and all of a sudden, all was forgotten with Trey Lance.
And I give the 49ers credit. They could have went back a lot of times on Brock Purdy, right? But you know what they did? They embraced it. They said, no, this 6th-round dude, we're going to play him.
I saw Kyle Shanahan say he was like in a frustrated moment. He told the front office and ownership early, Brock Purdy's the best quarterback we have. That was early.
Really?
When Trey was still on the.
And they had Jimmy at the time.
They were trying to make Trey work, and Kyle was like, Purdy's the best quarterback. And he said that's probably not the thing to say to ownership and to the front office after they just invested all of this into Trey Lance, but it was immediate to him right away.
And he probably had a lot of say in getting. I mean, he had to.
I would imagine.
John and Trey have John and Kyle have a close working relationship. They are
partnership.
They're a partnership, and it works. But it's fascinating to me that he would have been able to say early on, because remember, not only Trey Lance failed, Jimmy Garoppolo failed.
Right.
And he was the break glass in case of emergency guy.
And think about it.
And he came in and not only put out the fire, but he rebuilt the entire building.
So this is the foresight I give him credit for. Not only did he have the foresight to say Brock Purdy, think about if we had a quarterback that was in a Super Bowl but lost. We ain't moving on that person ever. What are you talking about? That kid whoever it is going to be here forever. Not only did Jimmy Garoppolo go, he was close to winning the game against the Chiefs.
Yep.
They said, you know what? We're getting Jimmy Garoppolo out of here. Trey Lance, we gave up the whole farm for him. We get him out of there, and we go with Brock Purdy.
Well, I mean, the Rams.
That's wild.
The Rams did the same with Goff.
That is wild.
And Goff's better than Garoppolo. Way better than Garoppolo.
That's crazy.
Well, you can go back to the 49ers even more with Colin Kaepernick. He came within a whisker of winning a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Now, there were some other circumstances at play there, but...
The circumstances was he got blackballed from the league.
Exactly. if you're going to miss as historically and as epically as the Browns miss, you better be good on the fringes in the other areas. And when you look at their drafts, they haven't been.
Now, hold on. I will say this. Mikey McNuggets, do your victory lap. Because
Mikey McNuggets is not getting a victory lap for Cedric Tillman because he's going to be wrong about Cedric Tillman.
Cedric Tillman?
What was your prediction?
2 weeks in a row.
What was your prediction about Cedric Tillman, Mikey McNuggets, that we laughed at you for?
Hey, look, Jason Lloyd's face, he rolling, he over here. He almost had a seizure.
Go ahead.
I said he'd finish second on the team in receiving yards, which he's not there yet.
When
G. Bush on the postgame show told me to take a victory lap, I said, I'm not taking a victory lap. I'm just at least calling the city to see which streets will be available.
No, there's no victory lap.
If at the end of the season,
get your ducks out.
But look, somebody has to catch passes. Someone has to be number two. Yeah, someone has to catch passes.
No,
you're going to go 0 for 24?
No, my point is, you could have. There are teams that have nobody with 500 yards or nobody with 600 yards.
When he caught that slant pass, he was moving at a speed I've never seen him move before.
Here's why Mike gets no victory lap, because he's going to be wrong, because Cedric Tillman is going to lead this team.
Oh!
No, that's
what a heel change.
But okay, who else is? Amari's gone.
But
you funny guy.
I'm not going to downplay what I've seen from Cedric Tillman the last 2 weeks, because
you can't. Yeah, no, it's real.
He's played great football the last 2 games.
It's real.
Hey, can I get half credit for my Jameis will lead the team in passing? Do I get half credit for that?
Cats is putting in their bids. I need a piece of that
he's been saying DTR is going to play the whole year.
I didn't have both on the table. I only put one on the table.
You said DTR?
No,
he texted me the morning we had to do bowl predictions. True story. I'm going to peel back all the curtains.
Peel back the onion.
Jason texted me that morning and said, I have a bold prediction, but I don't have the balls to put it on the show.
Really?
Yeah.
That's unlikely.
And he's texted me. No. And he texted me and said, Jameis will lead the Browns in passing yards this year. And I said, haha, okay.
Yeah.
What's your real one? And then he sent us the real one, which I forget what the real
I
one was.
meant it, but I just didn't
Wait,
have
by
the
the way-
what point was this?
Before the season.
before the season.
Oh, okay. Well, then
By the
you
way,
get
I
credit
would
for
have
that.
considered that way more realistic than Cedric Tillman finishing second in receiving yards at the beginning of the season because Deshaun Watson can't stay healthy and got hurt again.
No, I wanted to go with that, but I didn't.
should've.
I went with Mark
Very
Emerson.
unlike you.
I
Listen.
know. It really, I was a coward.
And by the way, let's keep it. I think we downplaying this a little bit. The man just threw for 334, and we hadn't seen 160. We had all kind of charts and graphs and all kind of stuff up.
3 years here, Deshaun never got it.
We
never.
see.
I just saw a stat on Twitter, and then we're going to do a read and talk about the offensive line, giving them more time. In 5 of the last 6 starts, Browns quarterbacks not named Deshaun Watson have they've thrown for 300 yards.
That's insane.
The
Regular
one
season
out of the
games.
6, regular season.
Yeah.
The 1 out of 6 that wasn't was Jeff Driscoll in Week 18.
Right.
Against the Bengals.
That
doesn't
is the
count.
biggest
Yeah.
indictment for why this thing was so sideways.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
300-yard games now are like 350-yard games.
Four in a row for Flacco, and then the Driscoll one, and then obviously the playoff game. So that's not included in the regular season. And then the
Yet
first
somebody
game.
in analytics or ownership insists that number 4 was the best guy.
Well, I don't know that we need to blame analytics.
I think they came down.
Well,
from
I
the
said
mountain.
analytics because I'm kind
Okay,
of pointing a
dollars
finger.
and cents, not analytics.
No, dollars. My analytics play is I'm not sure Paul DePodesta isn't screaming to the owner, who's then screaming to the head coach, this is your guy. I'm telling you, we need a bigger sample size.
I mean,
I don't know. We'll never know, so everybody gets the
If
blame.
anything, I would say it was anti-analytics to play Deshaun Watson because analytics takes the emotions out of it.
And you know what's so crazy?
Yeah, but they're also looking at the past numbers. That he put up.
And Jimmy, this is the way it is. Jimmy's going to look at it and say, well, look, at least they're throwing the football. This is what I always wanted. He going to look at that 334. Now, he might be mad he got to write that
check. We haven't talked about
check.
Nick Chubb yet. I
Yeah.
know you want to do a read, but does anybody have anything definitive to say about Nick other than it still looks like he's clearly
No,
rounding back?
I thought he better.
He's
I thought he was
coming.
better.
He's
I thought he was
coming.
better.
I think he's not far off, too.
He looked better. He had that one nice run, that 15-yarder.
He had a run early on where Zach Jackson and I were sitting next to each other, and Zach said, "That's old Nick," because
that's
there
what
was
it looks
nothing
like.
there.
Right.
There was nothing there, and he got like 7 or 8 out of it.
Yes, but he can't do it all the time
Right.
yet.
And I will
But
say,
by the end of the year,
He's
going to be
rounding
close.
into
Right?
form.
and trust and believe this. Like, when you see the way that they're playing with the play action and things like that, you gotta account for Nick Chubb. And the stronger he's
100%.
going to get, now guys are going to be even more open because you got to respect that. And the offensive line, and I seen Joe Bitonio doing this. I seen him doing this.
Yes.
I seen him doing this eating. And I've been waiting all year to say, listen, let these dudes tee off on somebody for
Yeah.
once. Let them guys go
instead
at
of being
somebody.
on the defensive.
On the defensive.
Are we doing more on the receivers, or are we?
Yeah, we're going to offensive line, then we'll get to the receiver because G
All
mentioned Bitonio and DeJuan Jones made his first career start at left tackle. The Browns had needed a left tackle, and DeJuan, if he put his resume on LinkedIn, that would have been the perfect way for the Browns to find their new left tackle. Because just like the Cleveland Browns, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has all the tools to help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites, so if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Ball's a heck of a performance from DeJuan Jones making his first career start at left tackle. Jed Wills was out with an injury, but I'm not sure he's going to get the job back even if he's healthy. That's how well DeJuan played yesterday.
Listen, Jed Wills is not any good, but let's not get carried away. It was one game. It was shocking because DeJuan Jones has been awful this year. He's been just terrible. I think
Maybe he was a left tackle all along.
I think he barely played it in college.
I don't
let
think he
alone
did play it in
NFL.
college. I don't know that he ever did.
That was crazy.
He did, but briefly.
Did he?
I'll be curious to
He had
see.
one game at Ohio State.
I'll be curious to see how he graded out, Mike. Are the grades out yet?
Yes, they are. I'll pull it up right here.
How'd he do?
Jameis was the highest graded Brown.
Not surprising.
And DeJuan Jones actually did not grade out well whatsoever. He graded out the lowest on the Browns with a 38.7 grade.
I watched him. I tried to watch him quite a bit. Listen, we don't know the assignments. He looked great. There was one play for sure he got away with a hold where he tackled the guy and laid on him, and they didn't call it. But for the most part, I thought I talked to other guys across the line who thought he played well. The big thing for DeWan, we've talked about it before, is his weight.
Yeah.
And I finally got a number yesterday that he was up to 415 this year.
Wait, was that his peak? Or that's not right. Is that right now?
That's not right now.
Because I do think he's starting to go the right way.
He is.
But I said this.
You did
fat
say he was
guys
400.
know when other fat guys are lying about their weight. Yeah. And there was no way he was 360 or whatever the hell they were calling him.
He was up to 415
Wow.
in the last few weeks. And give him credit. He's taken the conditioning seriously. I don't know if he's changed his diet at all. But he's trimmed down, I believe, about 40 pounds. So he's back down around 375. And if he can drop another 20, 25, that would really be his sweet spot window to where he could play in. Listen, another big part that we haven't really touched on is the fact Wyatt Teller came back to right guard.
Yeah.
So that really solidified the line. When you put Wyatt back in at right guard, DeWan.
It's the whole starting line, except for
for left tackle.
Except for left tackle. But
I think also, sorry, G, but nobody went out on the O-line during the game. I think every guy that started played every snap, which we haven't seen. So there was some continuity there.
I think,
real quick, 415 was when, Jason? Is that training camp? Was that some point
early in the season when he was getting
beat
like a turnstile?
Yeah.
Because we all wondered if it was the knee, if the knee was bothering him, and what came back to me was it was the weight more than the knee. But and listen, what did we talk about last year? Maturity. Being a professional.
Yep.
Well, what is maturity in being a professional? Keeping your weight under control.
Showing up on day one ready to work.
Ready to work.
Not 30 or 40 or 50 or 75 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm stunned, Jason, because that's been a propensity for him. And we've known he's a big, large human being. But I'm kind of surprised that it was ever allowed to get that out of hand.
I'm telling you, listen, this is why I think it was so important for Kevin Stefanski to buckle down and say, I got some other stuff to be doing. Because now he's not worried about what play I'm calling. Now, think about how impactful this is if the boss comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to spend the entire day right next to you. In film room, in the weight room, I'm walking next to you. I want to see how you working. I want to see how you working. Yeah. I want to see what you eating. And now that spotlight of the coach being in the offensive line room, looking directly at you, is a thing. Because by the way,
impactful, but they don't have time to do that.
It wasn't. You know who it was? It wasn't Kevin. You know who it was?
Who's that?
It was Mike Vrabel.
See,
Vrabel the last couple of weeks has been embedded really with the offensive line more than he had. Yes, and
that's fascinating.
And you saw it play out Sunday where he spent a lot of time in between series with the offensive line on the offensive line bench, talking to DeWan. Spent a couple minutes with Joel. But I was told,
what a resource to be able to have that. It's like a second head coach.
Even during the week, though, the last couple of weeks, he has really made the offensive. He started with the tight ends, but the last couple of weeks, he's really made the offensive line.
And I'm gonna give you. If you listen, if I'm gonna criticize you when the team is playing bad, I'm gonna give Kevin Stefanski credit for making the adjustments. And guess what? Jed Wills was not playing this week.
Nope.
The meme, he must have had time to get on Twitter to see the memes of which way did he go, George? Which way did he go? Listen, and he's sitting on the bench chilling.
To Mike's point, I would stick with DeWan as long as he's playing.
Absolutely. I'm not going to declare him off one game.
No, not
but I'm going to declare he's back out there next week. Jed's not.
And I would also say this: it's his to lose.
Yes. Absolutely.
So you keep giving him leash.
Right.
And he's where he wants to be. This is what he wanted.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the motivation this is the carrot in front of him to keep the weight under control, to keep being a professional, doing what you're supposed to do. Because we didn't see this last year.
No, we didn't.
But it reared up over the summer and all of their fears from last year that I kept telling you guys about. This is what they're worried about.
I'll give you credit for that.
This year,
me and Jason was going back and forth about that. We had a contentious argument about DeWan Jones and him being immature, and I'll give you credit for that. You was spot on. You saw something, and even though he was playing well, there was something inside of him that wasn't ready to go. You got to be ready to go, man. And I think Kevin Stefanski looked at a bunch of guys saying, man, we're not ready to go a lot of places. And so let me dial that back a little bit and get a handle on this.
To my point of being surprised that it got that far, on the first day of training camp, when you stand on the scale, there weren't 5-alarm fire bells going off.
I don't know what he weighed in at when they reported. I don't know what the
I remember seeing when I first saw him this year, and the video was coming back from camp. Everybody said it. They're like, I don't know if he was 415 then, but my guess is that's probably when it peaked.
The problem, Jay, was what choice did they have? They had to play him because the other guys were hurt.
Get his ass in shape.
Well, that's easy to say. Ultimately, he's got to do it.
He's got to put in the work.
Fine, if he doesn't do it, you're not seeing the field.
Right, but maybe they would have done that, but the other guys were hurt, so they couldn't do that.
It's tough.
And Jed Wills is a free agent at the end of the year anyway. So
finally, we're done with that debacle. And
by the way, it's interesting. The Browns, as you said, and you're right, kind of have 2 head coaches. And oddly, Ohio State's got 0 head coaches. I don't know what happened.
Big one Saturday.
Snuck that in.
Big one Saturday.
Well, you want to talk about the weapons for the second, the Browns, before we get to Jimmy Donovan?
I got to say, we have killed Andrew Berry, deservedly so, and we have killed their ability to draft wide receivers. And I don't want to go crazy because it's still just 2 games. There have been plenty of wide receivers in the history of football that have had stretches of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, where they put up big numbers and they've done nothing the rest of their careers. And you might say, Bull, I don't remember any of those guys. Well, that's the point, because they were only good for a couple of weeks. So Cedric Tillman has a ton to prove. But I think he has played great the last 2 weeks, and I want to give him full credit.
Yeah.
He's had a ton of targets. He's caught almost every ball that went his way. And we have, pissed on this guy, to be honest. And finally, again, way more to prove. I'm not saying it's done. But the last 2 weeks, this guy's looked like a legitimate NFL wide receiver. You thought when they got him, he'd be a guy they could go to the end zone with. And he did it twice. He's a big guy.
They still haven't thrown fade routes to him.
I
thought that would be his role.
I thought
it hasn't happened one time.
I agree with you. I said, well, you know what? If nothing else, they can turn him in to a fade guy inside the red zone.
Big body, go use your
and
body,
maybe that
go
will
up
come,
and get it.
Listen, if we're going to kill him every time they don't do well, it's something to be excited about. He's a young player.
I agree.
And he's played real well. And the fact they had 4 guys have 60 or more receiving yards, I mean, how often have the Browns had that?
Man, listen, I got to say this, man.
They got more out of him than they did Anthony Schwartz or David Bell already.
Ever.
Oh, yeah.
A lot. We've been destroying Elijah Moore.
And he had a nice game, too.
Elijah Moore had one of the best routes I've ever seen him run. I'm like, man, I didn't know you was he got out of this break quick, got his feet down in bounds, I
think we're all talking about the same play. I think you're talking about the same play Mike and I talked about before the show.
Yeah. I'm like, when did you get this? What was this part of your repertoire? It's amazing that it could be night and day. Now listen, I'm still the general Project Stockpile. Just because I'm Big Circus don't mean I changed that over.
Project names.
Yeah, I got a lot of them, man. Project Duke and Knee-Jerk still too. Don't get it twisted. Yep. I need all the kind of T-shirts. We can't move no T-shirts until y'all win 3 more games. I need 3 more games.
Well, we made Kool-Aid after one.
We got Kool-Aid. We moving. It's small incremental steps. But I will say this: they still need some receivers. But now I'm interested in seeing who can really play or not. Because now it's evaluation time.
Yep.
We thought, I'm like, dang, what is Njoku talking about? All of a sudden, Njoku make 2 great catches in the game. And when you see the chart spread out, 5 catches, 8 catches, this many targets, I'm like, well, listen, we might got a little something here. Y'all might get excited. I might start preaching like Winston if y'all keep doing your thing. This is crazy.
His mega church is going to have huge attendance on Sundays. Whenever when he's done playing.
Hopefully the church, it will be Cleveland Browns Stadium.
He will definitely. he is moving in that televangelist
he's gonna have a mega church. Yeah, the Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
the famous Jameis Winston mega church is going to be my guess.
when that lady was asking him the questions before
I got to say, I laughed very hard.
And she handled it fine.
She really goes, well, there you have it. The message is clear. He's relying on God today, and in the end,
Jesus,
he was right.
Jesus saves. He was like, I was like, this is crazy. And then he came out and delivered. Keep delivering, man. Whatever works for you, dog. Hey.
Did you guys see the parody? I think I asked this last week. The knockoff on the Jameis Winston interview where he said he was praying, where Deshaun was doing all the right things, and he said there was a guy that was imitating it, and he killed it. But one of the things that made me laugh was I'm praying for that man's legs. I'm praying for them legs. I
That is pause worthy. That is crazy.
Yeah, that is kind of a pause.
You can't, given the situation, that is wild. Praying for legs?
He was praying for legs.
This is what. See, this is why.
So many different ways you can go with that.
I mean, it's in all of them.
He went the pause way.
Yeah. Listen, how many more games? I'm going to ask y'all this question. I mean, last year, it took y'all how many games to get on the Flaccavelli train?
2.
How many games?
Took me more than that.
You were really. You still weren't on board at the end of the year. Get him out of here.
Jason, Jason Lloyd's, his skeptical eyes, he'd be almost asleep. It'd be like this many slits in his eyes.
You want me to throw a grenade on you?
Yeah.
You want me to throw a grenade on you?
I was just about to say, before you do it,
Yeah.
Jason is about to say something, and if I think I know what it is, I agree with it, that will get these guys very angry and most of the fan base angry. So please do it.
There it is. Here we go. Set it up.
At 12:40 with 20 minutes left in the show, I would trade Jameis today if I could. I'd trade him today.
But now listen, it's the same guy that was like, "Oh, Flacco. Who needs a quarterback? Quarterbacks are overrated."
Trade deadline's a week away. I'd trade him today. You give me a third-round pick, gone.
I just got my
Pack his bags.
I'm sitting
gone.
here fiending. I said 4,500. That man just threw 330.
Is that what you thought he was
That's
gonna say?
Yeah,
wild.
And you agree?
I do agree.
Jay, I agree with something you've been saying forever.
God.
You're dead inside. You are so dead and cold
You
and
just
dead.
ripped my soul out of
You know
you.
what? And it's funny because it might be the smart move.
It is the smart
move.
Hey,
but
wait
here's
till-
the thing, and I know that you make a great point. Who wants to win 7 or 8 games?
Me.
That's the last place.
This
you wanna
guy.
be. But you know what? I'm on a week-to-week plan.
I get
I'm
it.
59. I'm on a week-to-week plan. Give me experiences. Give me exciting games that I'll remember. Give me the Jets game from last year. Give me yesterday. If we don't get the whole ball of wax this year, it's 59 years in a row that we haven't.
Hey, you're not ready to have
I get it.
You're not ready to have the Nick Chubb conversation.
No.
Trade deadline's a week away.
No.
You ready for the Nick Chubb
No, I
conversation?
don't want that. I want no parts of it.
I get it.
He has no trade value unless you trade and sign.
From a just brain standpoint, it makes sense in theory. But sports is about emotion. That's why we love it.
Yeah, and
emotionally, it would be terrible to
here's
do.
what
They're
will
not. I don't
happen.
think they're going to do it. But
Jimmy's building a stadium that he's going to charge a lot more for tickets for. Okay?
And Jameis and Nick Chubb ain't going to be in it.
They're not going to be in it, but I've never seen a fan base hemorrhage as much as I've seen the Browns fan base hemorrhage. Because usually that's your team, you ride or die.
Yeah.
But I remember when they signed Jameis Winston, never before had I ever seen so many Browns fans say, "I'm officially done with you guys. I'm done. I can't support that."
Yeah.
And I happen to know some personally that 2 years later, 3 years later, they're living it. They're like, "Oh no, I don't watch anymore. I'm done. I don't care." Now, maybe they weren't diehard fans to begin with, but the last thing he can do is trade away a quarterback that looks like a quarterback and then ask for more money in 5 years.
Just to put a bow on it, I would not trade Nick Chubb because you're probably not going to get more than a fifth for him.
Nothing there. There's no
and that's
value.
not worth it. It's the sentimental and everything. But you do have to have the Jameis, and we have a whole week before a trade deadline. You have to have the Jameis conversation because this team needs draft picks and they need cheap players because they got an $85 million dead cap hit coming next year, and they still have to fill out a roster. So you have to have difficult conversations.
What if you get a first-round pick? If you get a first-round
You're
pick,
not getting a first-round pick for Jameis Winston.
But
it's quarterback. If some team of a good team,
if you get a
quarterback got hurt,
first-round pick, I'll fly the plane.
Tell me the team right now.
Right now, there's nobody.
That's my
And there
point.
probably won't be
It's all
anybody.
the market. The market sets the price.
I think they were trying to get like a 2 for him. Remember, they already shopped Jameis.
They did.
They tried.
Hey, listen,
if they get it this time,
if he plays well again,
I gone do.
If he
because I can't watch any more of that.
If he plays well 2 more times, I'm signing him to another 2-year deal.
No.
Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Because look, if they have no recourse, they're too good to lose all these games. They're not going to get no young quarterback. Deshaun Watson will still be on this roster. You cannot have a void. If you don't want Deshaun Watson to be in the conversation, you better have a quarterback on the roster.
Last week we were talking about the first overall pick of the draft. Now they're too good to.
Yes, you didn't see them play.
Oh, how fast things can turn. You know what?
Yes.
Here's something that we need to talk about at some point. I think that Nick Chubb has deserved the Lifetime Achievement Award contract This team probably is not going to be in a position to do that because they're paying $85 million next year for a player that won't play for them.
Right, but also...
So normally what I'm saying by that is overpay him. Nick, go out and get your best offer. Get your best offer, whatever it is, we're going to beat it. You've earned that with us. They probably don't have the flexibility to do that.
Running backs are still not getting paid a lot of money.
Let him go out and test the market and then come back to me with the best.
If Nick Chubb by the end of the year looks like completely like Nick Chubb again, they should absolutely.
Nick Chubb is never going to not be a Brown.
You can't let him.
Listen, I hope you're right.
I hope you're right. My scary moment was last season into this season because he was carrying the big number, and I was afraid that they were going to have to move on from him.
Right.
The injury actually helped them in terms of being able to keep him.
Just like Shane Bieber.
And now
He
we'll
is
see.
the shield. He is keeping you from all hell breaking loose.
Yeah, for all the angst, if they traded Jameis Winston, it'd be way worse if they traded.
For
Nick
sure.
Chubb.
Oh my God!
And especially because you wouldn't get as much back.
Right.
And some
You
people
might hear
lose
the
their
next
mind.
day, Mayor Bibb might hold a news conference and say, "Well, the Browns just called; they're staying here."
We do have one last thing we got to touch on before we get to Super Chats today. But first, a quick word from Game Time. If you want to get to the Cavs-Lakers game at Rocket Mortgage on Wednesday or the Browns-Chargers game on Sunday at Cleveland Browns Stadium, you better be using Game Time to get those tickets. Game Time Picks is their newest feature, which makes getting tickets to any live event even easier than before. It filters out all the fluff that only shows you incredible deals on the best seats possible, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Once again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it?
Game time.
It's game time.
Cavs Knicks tonight, McNuggets. That's huge. We should be talking about it.
It couldn't be less huge.
It's
even though I'm
huge.
excited to watch it.
Hey, we gonna find Evan Mobley. Listen, I'm gonna tell you, Evan Mobley. Let me find out that he didn't turn back into a unicorn. Jason,
We're doing Cavs in overtime because we got to give Jimmy Donovan the appropriate time he deserves.
We
because
do.
the Cleveland community lost an icon this weekend, and Jay, I know you worked with him incredibly close. And G. Bush, you got emotional on the postgame show talking about him yesterday. Jason, your article in The Athletic on Jimmy went up during the show. It's officially posted, so you guys were all close with Jimmy. And Bull, I know you've been in the same city, worked along Jimmy for a long time, but it felt weird not hearing Jimmy's call of the game-winning touchdown in the aftermath of the win yesterday. And it felt like, at least to a certain extent, that win yesterday was for Jimmy. He was there doing what he could from above to help out the Browns.
My favorite image from yesterday was the picture of Kevin and Andrew Barry taking the game ball to Jimmy's home and presenting it to his wife Cheryl and his daughter Megan. That was my favorite image of yesterday. Jimmy is, you talk about a unicorn. When I first saw Jimmy, I was in my sophomore year of college, and I saw him when I was home on break, and he looked so young. He's 25 years old, 26 years old. And I'm like, wow, how does a guy that looks that young make it to Cleveland? Cleveland was like the 9th or 10th largest market at the time. And so my first impression was, wow, he's so young. And then my second impression was, and I've been a student of television sportscasting really my whole life. I always had one eye on that, and I knew that when I first saw it, that's what I want to do. And I said right away about Jimmy, there is something really different about him. His passion isn't fake, it's real. His enthusiasm is genuine, and his personality poured through every sportscast he ever did. So I set up my parents' VCR to tape for 15 minutes every night, 6:15 and 11:15, which was the window that Jimmy's sportscasts would fall in. And when the tapes would get full, they would send the VHS tapes to my dorm at Bowling Green. And I was maniacal. I studied everything. I watched every single show that he did that came over tapes. I still have 12, 15 VHS tapes. For some reason, I never got rid of them. They're nothing but Jimmy Donovan sportscasts. This is the end of weather, a commercial break, Jimmy's sportscast, and the end of the show. Mm-hmm. And I would fast forward through the weather and the commercials, and then when Jimmy would come up, I was fixated. And my roommates would constantly hear this. And they're like, bro, what are you watching? That happened like a month ago. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not watching for the news. I'm watching for the stylistic genius that was Jimmy Donovan. And then I thought, well, I don't really know I don't know what other sportscasts look like. You only see local sportscasts in your town. And I had only lived in a market that could see Cleveland and Toledo, and I knew there was a vast difference between the two. But even against behemoths in the market like Nev Chandler and Casey Coleman, and not taking anything away from those guys, they were great in their own way. And by the way, also Browns play-by-play men.
Yep.
But there was something about watching Jimmy that I just couldn't take my eyes off of. And I styled my pattern, I patterned my style after Jimmy. When I learned that Jimmy was mostly ad-lib, then I said, well, then I have to mostly ad-lib. I don't want to be tied to a teleprompter because Jimmy thinks that's a bad idea. I literally wanted to become Jim Donovan. And then when I had the opportunity later in my career to work for him, it was amongst the highlights of my career. I remember conversations that I would have with Jimmy just talking about how you approach a sportscast. And just talking sports with him was a dream. We tend to think of Jimmy more as the Browns play-by-play man. And we've had some good ones. But he wasn't just good at Browns and play-by-play work. His sportscasts were the best I'd ever seen, and I later found that to be a fact as I traveled around the country and saw the greatest sportscasters every market had to offer. And there were many of them that were great, but none of them were as good as Jimmy. And he'll never be replicated or duplicated, and we're going to miss him greatly. We already do because he retired a couple months ago, but it's just a really, really sad time for all of us in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, the first time I ever did things, in the industry, I worked on the Browns radio network, and I used to do the in-game stuff, and I used to freak out because I used to be like, man, I got to turn their mics off, or I got to tell these people when to go to break, or I got to do this, and I used to freak out all the time. And one time, in between the breaks, he was just like, hey, I heard one of your shows. And I'm like, what? He said, yeah, you did a show the other day. He's like, you got a unique personality, man. Keep at it. And I'm like, man, like, that was wild to me. Like, he was the first person at that time, I'm thinking I'm going to just shut up and tell you when I don't want no problems. But that meant he didn't have to say that. Like, I mean, that meant a lot to me. And just, seeing him in passing and doing certain things and knowing that he devoted, half of his, adult life, more than half of his life to the Cleveland Browns. And, when the news came down, I don't know why it hit me that hard, because I just remember him retiring a couple of days ago. And the way that happens, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, man, maybe Jay or people knew it a little deeper than we knew.
No, we did. When he wasn't able to go to the Browns induction, that when I heard that he couldn't make that, I knew that it was really, really serious, because he would have loved to have been there. And we all remember him smashing the guitar after he was declared cancer-free last year. One of my favorite moments ever inside that stadium. And then when he couldn't make it to the Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame induction just a couple of weeks ago, and then last week, he had lost his appetite completely and stopped eating. And I know from going through it with my dad that when you go into hospice and you completely stop eating, that unfortunately the end is very, very near, and that's the way it worked out. And
because in my mind I always thought that he was going to beat it. Like, I think that was the part that hit a little bit. And for me, that's why this thing is important to us, because we all love the Browns and we are some sort of community. And I think in a small way, after all the crazy stuff that was going on, it really helped bring the Browns community back together in realizing what it's all about.
Something we can all agree on.
Yes.
We all love Jim Donovan.
Are you doing the 7 tonight? Are you doing that?
I'm going to be up there for it, yeah.
I'm coming back to do the 7 o'clock. For those who don't know, Channel 3 is doing an hour-long special tonight on Jimmy, the 7 o'clock. What is normally front row at 7 will now be an hour-long special.
Which was Jimmy's show.
Yeah, it was Jimmy's show. It'll now be an hour-long tribute to him. I put up an article I wrote late last night and finished up this morning on The Athletic. I was pretty vulnerable, just talking about, like, my big regret is I didn't reach out to him. And I heard from him 2 weeks ago was the last I heard from him, and he was worried about Kevin. And he was worried about Kevin's job security. Yeah. He loved Kevin. He loved Kevin Stefanski. He just thought he was the high character guy and the right guy to lead this franchise. And he texted me a couple weeks ago to say, like, how's our guy? How's Kevin doing? You think he's going to be okay with all this? And I always since from the time he retired, I wanted to reach out to him, and I wanted to allow him to tell his story, to tell his goodbye. I wanted to give him the opportunity to tell the fans goodbye. And I never reached out to him because, and I wrote today in the story, how do you ask someone if they're ready to die if you don't know the answer? And I didn't know if he was ready or not. And I don't frankly think he was up until a few days ago from talking to people who knew him well. I think within the last few days, he's really when he came to terms with how this was going to go. And by then he was ready. By then it was probably too late. So that's regret that I carry, that I didn't reach out to him and I didn't give him that opportunity. But, like everybody else, I love getting to know Jimmy. We really got to work together when I was covering the Cavs, and we would do stand-ups together on the Cavs. And he hit it well. He was a huge Boston sports fan. Loved the Celtics, loved the Bruins, was a season ticket holder for the Bruins when he was a kid. Every time he saw me, he would ask me, could the Celtics do it this year? What do you think of their coach? What do you think of these guys? He loved to gossip. He loved Browns gossip. He loved NBA gossip. He just loved to know, what little nugget do you have about my Celtics and about the NBA? So I would come early. I would do that 7 o'clock. Mary Kay and I would do the 7 o'clock with him these last few years when I was more involved with the Browns. And I would get there 6:30, 6:35 or so right after the newscast ended, so we could have a good 15 or 20 minutes just to BS and chew the fat and just talk about whatever. And I love those moments. And one more thing, I wrote about it today, but Dallas Gentry was his bone marrow transplant donor in 2011. Jimmy would have died in 2011 without a bone marrow transplant. And Dallas Gentry, a corrections officer in Virginia with no connection to him whatsoever, put himself on the bone marrow transplant list 14 years earlier. And he was giving blood, and they asked him if he wanted to be a bone marrow. He didn't know anything about it. And he said, yeah, sure, whatever. Went on with his life. 14 years later, he got a call that he was a perfect 10-point match for Jimmy. And it would be painful for Dallas, but if he was willing to go through a bone marrow transplant, this man could live. This man he never met could live. Dallas said yes. They had a relationship over these last 13 years. Dallas became part of their family. And because Dallas Gentry was selfless enough to go through a little bit of pain, he gave us 13 extra years with Jim Donovan. And for that, I say thank you to Dallas Gentry.
Well said.
It's you've made a difference when people that have never met you feel like they know you.
Yeah.
Right? And
Feel like family.
Yeah. And I feel like, I had been very close with Les Levine, and he passed away a few years ago. And then Michael Stanley passed away, and now
We're
Jim.
losing our forefathers.
I know.
Danny Coughlin.
That hit
Danny
hard.
Coughlin.
That
Coughlin
really
was
hit,
another one.
the fact that these are our elder statesmen that
I know.
we listen
We are
to.
These are
losing our
guys who are,
forefathers.
legends, and you feel like you know them, even if you don't know them. And that's how a lot of people felt like Jim. There's something special, and it's changed in recent years because people don't listen to the radio like they used to. We, the four of us, although different ages, are all old enough to remember what it was like being a kid, and not everything was on TV. And that radio that you'd have on your nightstand to pick up, the local broadcast, and sometimes you'd pick up something from Chicago or whatever,
It was blacked out here. And when I was in Canton, that was the way we listened. It was the games were blacked out.
And you listened on the radio, and there was a special connection that you would make with your play-by-play guy because it felt like he represented you and your fandom. And Jimmy, although he was from Boston, which I can appreciate because obviously he embraced being a Clevelander, you'd never know it because he was. When you watched him do that, are there phony people in the media? Of course there are, but he wasn't one of them.
He loved the Browns.
He is so passionate about this team. He lived and died with it. And so when you lose somebody like that, yes, obviously it affects his family and those who knew him way more. But every fan of the Browns on the planet feels like they've lost somebody they knew today. And real quick, specifically, because obviously Jim died of leukemia, and my wife, had also a transplant and went through many treatments for leukemia, and she's doing well now. But I think to follow up on what Jason said, please, everybody, there are some people that cannot get transplants because there's not enough people willing to donate, and I don't even think that they're not willing, they just don't know enough about it.
BeTheMatch.org.
Right, BeTheMatch.org. don't just donate blood, donate bone marrow. It's actually not as bad a process as it used to be. It's even less painful than it was when Jimmy did it for the person giving it. But it is so important. So if especially for young people, because it's usually better matches.
I'm glad you went there with it.
Yeah.
Let's bring something good from it. Just a quick programming note. We're going to skip overtime. We're going to stay on and do super chats. One last thing that triggered my memory that you said that you used to love to come in early before the 7. Jimmy was in his glory from 3:30 to 4:30 every day. He would come in, and he was a magnet for people. If he was back in the sports section, there were 5 or 6 people that every day gravitated to the sports section. And Jimmy was just being Jimmy.
Yeah.
Being funny. Jimmy's wit was incredible. He was so funny and quick and witty. But he would hold court, and there would be people that probably had heard some of those stories once or twice already, but you still hinged on every word because Jimmy was a master storyteller. And I used to love to hear the laughter from that corner of the building. You know, the sports office is always called the toy box because, you know, we're at fun and games. And nobody exemplified that more than Jimmy. And when he was in a good and funny mood, he automatically lifted everybody up to that spot. And he is definitely going to be missed. He's been missed in our newsroom since he left. The fact that he wasn't from Cleveland but embraced it as hard as Clevelanders do is really, to me, Jimmy's most incredible trait. He was from Boston.
Yeah.
And yet
I'll
never forget his call after we finally beat the Jets on that Thursday night. Is this what it feels like?
Yeah.
Is this what it feels like to get a win? And in the Steelers' regular season finale, when they clinched a playoff spot, the only thing missing is you. Yep. And I'll never forget those lines. Yep. And now the only thing missing from Browns Nation is you, Jimmy. We love you.
All right, let's do some super chats to wrap up the show here. Our thoughts and support continue to be sent to the Donovan family and anyone associated. Make sure you check out the Celebration of Life at 7 o'clock tonight on WKYC. Got a bunch of super chats today. We'll start with the Goober216, who says 1% chance to make the playoffs. Do you go for it or try to get a higher draft pick?
Is that true, 1%?
No, I was just what
No,
I
I know
said.
statistically they have a number for everything.
Yeah, who knows?
And ESPN does calculate winning percentages.
They can't be much higher than that.
I would think that's probably, that's why I asked,
Somewhere
is that
around
true? Because
that,
it feels like it is 1%.
I'll dig into it.
But just imagine, and I know that you can't play all 18 holes at once. You play one, and then after that you play two. Just imagine for a second if they do rip off 4 in a row, and we sit at 6-6. It would be 5 in a row. At 6-6, your odds are much higher.
They're playing the Chargers next week.
Winnable game.
Decent team, but not a great offense.
Winnable game.
And then you play the Saints, who have been pretty
Is that
bad.
a home on the road?
Home Chargers.
But here's the
Chargers
thing.
and Saints are home.
This organization is going to face a pressure point immediately after that Chargers game because you have the trade deadline.
Yeah,
and we
that's
can
right.
talk about
Right,
Jameis.
right, yeah.
Zadarius Smith is a great trade candidate.
And he's playing well.
Right now,
Dalvin Tomlinson is another great trade candidate. So
Thornhill.
So you have decisions to make on guys right after that game Sunday.
Do you get a sense that they're going to sell and just...
I don't have a sense on anything.
No.
I'll be honest.
I feel like this game's going to determine everything.
That's where I was
The
going
only
with
thing
it.
you would say about their playoff chances maybe being a little higher than 1%, although we realistically know it's unlikely, is that a lot of the all-time stats on making the playoffs are skewed because now you have 7 playoff teams.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's
And an
easier to
extra
get
game
in.
goal, 17 games, not 16 too. So 1-6.
Right,
You
sure.
only have 9 games left. 1-6 now. You have 10.
Right. And also the bottom of the AFC, which we didn't expect, or not the bottom, but the bottom of the playoff teams in the AFC is not
wide
great.
open.
There's only 6
Miami has fallen off. Cincinnati has fallen off.
Right.
So
If they win Sunday, like as a front office,
Yeah.
you have to remove the emotion, and you have to look at what's real.
Sure.
And at a 3-6 football team, really do you have a chance to really make a run for it? That's the answer that they have to come up with. Because if the answer is no, even though these guys are going to be riding high and feeling good about themselves, taking a 2-game winning streak into the bye, you have some really hard decisions to make.
And
You just have to take the emotion out of it.
You're playing Kansas City, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and 2 with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, those, and Miami has Tua back. They're going to play better. So it's tough, but
If I look at it and you say, okay, they just played the Baltimore Ravens and they won. They look good against look good against the Bengals all the time. And you say, okay, the Steelers, I mean, they got.
Yeah, but you know that you can't judge a team like. At week to week, teams look differently.
I get it.
You know what I mean? So,
but traditionally, they play very well against Joe Burrow, and I guess it's
right. But in the end, they're going to have to win 8 out of 9.
If they lose against San Diego and then they sell, I forgive.
Right. Yeah.
If they win against San Diego and they kill that momentum with a fire sale,
that's
even at 3 and 6,
it's not going to be a fire sale.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think a fire sale.
Well, I think to Jason's point, it should be.
And it's the bye.
If you're 2 and 7, it better be a fire sale because now you absolutely have to think about next year.
Next super chat comes from Brendan G, who says, I'm so glad my team showed up and showed out for Jimmy Donovan. I love the Browns so much, and it's been hard to watch. Let's build off this and get back to work. Tyrell Jackson says, Elijah Moore's third down catch off of a bad pass due to the blitz was the play of the game, in my opinion. Adjusted to the ball, got the first down, stayed in bounds. It eventually set up the game winner to Tillman. Garrett Lampkin says, Mikey and Jason might have cooked with their preseason hot takes. Winston leading the team in passing yards and Tillman leading the team in receiving yards.
Did not say that.
Hold on. My YouTube just crashed. Give me 1 second.
Oh, boy.
I can only take half credit.
YouTube's fine.
Yeah, you only get credit for a take if you put said take out to the sphere.
Right.
But I did. I did put it on tape. I said I want this on the record in case it's true.
Nah.
Chris Fox.
Then you should have went on the record with it.
Chris Fox says, Jay, please leave Jameis alone. M. Bine says...
Did I pick on Jameis? I missed that part of the show.
M. Bine says, it's not about
Winston.
Jameis's tone or volume. It's about what he says. When he needs to be the motivator, he gets them motivated. They have to believe he can lead, and they do. Donnie M. says, guys, on the last play of the game, it looked like Miles got held so bad that he turned to the ref during the play and started yelling at him. Did you guys catch that? I love the show, watching from Saudi Arabia.
I did not catch Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
Shout out to Donnie for watching from Saudi Arabia.
First of all, they let y'all watch YouTube, no, bro?
I didn't know that.
Whatever link you watching, keep that secret. Don't you be giving her.
My guess is he's military. Would be my guess.
That's probably my guess.
I didn't notice Miles on the last play. I'll be totally
honest. I
don't
didn't
remember
either, other than the fact that he wasn't a factor.
I actually still haven't seen the last play because I was watching the Browns sideline the whole time. Like I figured if something big happened, I'd see the replay. I like watching the human reaction in the moment.
Yeah. Okay, next up, Travis Stroman says for Bull.
Yeah.
Are you enjoying the Dodgers doing to the Yankees what they did to us last round?
Yes.
Damn right I am. I want it, but it's not over yet. I'm not counting the Yankees out.
But it's saying
Let
the
him
series
finish
isn't
them up. I hate
the
the
series
Yankees
doesn't start until the road team wins.
Oh, but it's so
Those
fun.
2 games were great.
They're great
Amazing.
games.
Absolutely
I
unbelievable.
mean, Freddie Freeman, it's not quite Kirk Gibson. Let's not get that far.
No, but listen,
he's been hurt.
Did you see the sync up?
I did too. It was
He's not
unbelievable.
limping like
No,
that.
but still,
it's
World
kinda
Series
wild.
home run to win the
yeah.
game.
That was pretty wild.
I always thought, I
Same
could
part
be
of the
wrong
park?
on this because I'm just cynical. I always thought the limp that Gibson
Was a little
was
overstated.
a little overstated.
Yeah.
I mean, bro, you just jacked one 375 feet. You're okay. But the limp made the moment better.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he
And
gave it to us.
Otani tore up his shoulder, but he's still going to play.
Going to play in Game 3, which... Did you like the move to steal in that situation? I did not. They're up 4-1, and I know it ended up being a close game.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm like, what is he running for right now?
Hey, that's just how he plays all
I
the
know,
time.
but I would certainly think that came
I was in
with
the
permission.
car at that point. So I was in the car actually listening to the end of the game.
Oh, really?
Well, because my son, and shout out to my son. Can I say this for a minute, Mike?
Yeah.
We got a minute?
How'd the play go?
So he did great, thank you.
Awesome.
My son was in a play at the Beck Center. The Beck Center is an awesome place, no matter where you live. You don't have to live in Lakewood. It's in Lakewood. But what they do with kids in terms of dance and acting and art and all that stuff, they just do tremendous work. My son was in a show called the Monster Bash this weekend. It was for kids 8 to 19, and I'm a little biased. But a lot of parents said this to me, too. They were like, I thought he stole the show.
Wow.
He wasn't the lead character, but he was supposed to be a mad scientist, and he did it with an accent. Like, he decided he was going to be a Russian mad scientist.
I don't know where you got that kid from. I'm trying to
he's
figure.
gifted.
Let me find out.
Different.
Yeah.
Did you swap some kid? Like,
What are you trying to say? I don't have good genes.
Listen, I'm just saying, bro.
Wait, are you trying to say that Bull's not dramatic?
I mean,
Nah,
that's
man.
dramatic, too. But he's way more talented than I am. And I was so proud of him. I let him grow his hair out for the last month because he wanted to look crazy. So his hair is crazy, and he's keeping it for Halloween.
Do you have a clip that maybe you can share with us on the show later?
We'll have it. I
Okay.
mean, I got pictures, but not a clip. But because you can't videotape during the show.
Well, you would think that they would provide a link
Yeah,
for parents.
we will have it. Yes,
All right.
eventually. But
at some point, you have to clip it so we can all see
he
it.
was so good. His character's name was Dr. Brainium, and he was up there with these older kids that were performing in the bigger roles. And it's supposed to be a party, a once-a-century party for all the monsters.
Wow, they all come together.
And he just got up there and he blasted out his lines with the Russian accent. And some of the kids, you can't hear it's hard to hear what they're saying, but you heard every word he said. He enunciated. He took his time with the lines, and I was just
Broadway's
so proud
next.
of him.
Broadway always needs kid stars, man.
By the way, Anthony Castrovince's, I think, niece was in there too.
Oh yeah,
Really?
yeah.
The governor's grandson was not in this show, but he does some. He
Pretty
does
cool.
stuff there too. But
We
anyway,
got a
shout out
bunch
to the
more,
Beck
so
Center, and
let's get
they've
to the
asked me to consult on a show. They're doing a professional show about baseball, and they've asked me to be a consultant on that.
Wow.
That. Speaking of baseball, Eclipse Singleton says,
Yeah.
I got a Guardian cap myself. Did it after they made the ALCS. Rust Belt Rob says adding weight and size to the helmets to protect the brain shifts the risk to the neck. It's the reason there's different certifications for motorcycle helmets.
Yeah,
Deion
but
Wilson
quickly
says,
on that, I'm fairly certain that the newer helmets are actually lighter than the older helmets. They're made with a stronger, more durable. It's weird because
It makes sense.
Yeah, but that Kevlar is actually more durable but far less heavy than steel.
Right,
And you're like,
sure.
wait, how can that be?
Yeah.
Next up, Deion Wilson said, you guys said Paul forced Stefanski to give up play calling, but now he willingly did it because you like him. Our fans are
That's fair. That's
clowns.
a fair criticism.
No, I said
I've been
I said I
consistent,
don't know. I don't know.
And I've been
The
consistent.
one explanation I heard I thought made a little bit of sense, so that's why I'm saying
Did you hear that from someone inside?
Yeah.
Okay, then that carries a lot of
It could
validity.
also just be I got
I got
something to come up with.
I got all kind of conspiracy theories. What you talking about, man?
We got five more. Steve says, was the Reds paying Griffey Jr. for 15 years after retirement a worse contract than Deshaun?
No.
Griffey Jr.
What he's got?
He's
I
a
think
Hall
he's
of
talking
Famer.
about Bobby Bonilla.
No, he's talking about Griffey because Griffey had some injuries with the Reds and never really lived up to what they had paid him. But
Okay,
it's
but
no
all,
comparison.
yeah, all that being said, Griffey was a product of his injuries and how
Yeah.
hard he played.
Right.
Griffey was worth every penny that he got.
And he had some good years. Obviously, he was better in Seattle.
You're still going to find these guys that are going to support
Try and
Watson
justify.
with their last breath. They're still out there. Now, they're going to be they're squelched. But I saw before the game, people were saying, oh, wait until y'all see Jameis is going to suck too, and then you're going to find out that Deshaun wasn't the problem. No, we found out. We found out Deshaun was clearly and definitively the problem.
Yeah.
I don't even remember Ken Griffey Jr. getting paid after he retired. It probably wasn't a lot of money.
15 years, I don't remember.
Reds gave him a big contract. I don't
Yeah,
remember
but
the terms.
15 years?
I don't remember the terms.
Bobby Bonilla gets $1 million a year on
Yeah.
July 1st every year until 2040 or something.
Yeah.
We got three more. Pranav Karode says, Jameis is now the third quarterback to throw for 300 yards in Brown Stadium in the last 4 seasons. The other two, Joe Flacco and Bailey Zappi. Love Jim and his family.
That's funny.
Halim Youssef says Jones' weight went up because of surgery rehab. Don't forget about that. And Daryl says, great win, great show. Love you guys. See you soon. UCSS is on fire. And with that wraps up a Victory Monday edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
Quickly on the DeJuan surgery, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But usually there is some kind of cardio that you can do no matter what rehab you're on.
Yeah.
Even if it's pool-based.
Right.
You can still burn
that's
calories, and you can still control what you put in your mouth.
By the way, the Ken Griffey trade, he was traded from Mike Cameron, good
I
player.
remember that. Very
Brett
good player.
Tomko wasn't any good, and 2 minor leaguers who never played in the majors. So they gave up essentially nothing to get Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah. I think he's talking more about the contract. Don't try to justify this Deshaun move. It's the worst of all time, and that's that.
Mr. Kool-Aid
tomorrow.
Mafia says, good
Peace.
win. Peace.